Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast, partnered with Concussion Pro 1, the world's first dedicated concussion supplement. I'm your host, as always, Newsome, with your co-host Jon, and we're here to break down UFC 235, which is going down on Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada. Jon, how are you doing, bro?
How you doing, man? I'm doing very well, thank you. Really looking forward to this card. Some big fights, double titles, of course. So looking forward to breaking them down, man.
Absolutely, man. You took the words out of my mouth. Another card to be excited for. 2 title fights. We get to see Jon Jones for a second time in just a few months. A hugely anticipated welterweight title fight between 2 solid wrestlers. And while we're on the topic of wrestlers, we have Funky Ben Askren making his UFC debut too. So it's go time on the biggest card of 2019 so far. I'd just like to remind you all that the Premium Bets membership options from Newsome MMA are available, and on the Newsome MMA website you have the options of a standard bronze, silver and gold membership, and these memberships provide cheaper prices per fight card for those that commit to slightly longer terms, opposed to purchasing my picks individually per week. You can find all of these membership options at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So let's break down some fights. UFC 235 from bottom to top, and in the first fight of the night we've got Polyana Viana versus Cifers. Jon, who have you got?
Yeah, it's an interesting fight to open the card up. We've got Viana, the decorated grappler, extremely dangerous if the fight goes to the mat. If it does go there, you know that there's every chance that she's going to lock on a submission and get that win. And we're seeing a take on Cifers, who came up against a very tough opponent in Macy Barber in her in a UFC debut. But what she did show in that Macy Barber fight was extremely good heart, and I know she got finished with the ground and pound in the second round, but man, she took some big shots before she got put away. So it's a really interesting one because for me, Cifers is the far better striker. She's more powerful. She's pretty short. She's only 5'2", so she's got a bit of she's more short and stocky and got the power in that overhand right. We saw that we saw her land on Macy Barber a couple of times, and it'd be interesting to see how Polyana Viana deals with that, because her striking in the JJ Aldrich fight looked very basic, and we know her bread and butter is taking the fight to the mat and trying to lock on some kind of submission, whether it be rear naked choke, the method in which she defeated Maya Stevenson, triangle armbars. We've seen all sorts of submissions through her career on jungle fights as well. So it's really interesting. One thing that I did notice was Cifers was pretty strong in the clinch against Macy Barber. I thought that Barber would be able to manhandle her a bit, and I was quite surprised actually that Cifers was pretty strong in the clinch and held her own. She did get taken down, and she was trying to scramble. She was attempted to throw up a couple of submissions from the bottom as well, an omoplata I think there was in the at one point, and towards the finishing sequence she was trying to wrap up an ankle and go for a heel hook, ankle lock, and so she did show promising signs in the fight. And for me, this is quite a tough fight to pick, because I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Cifers just overpowers her Viana with a striking and gets the win that way. But it also wouldn't surprise me at all if at some point in the clinch, because obviously Viana's got that height as well, that height and reach advantage. If it goes into the clinch, she gets those long legs, gets a trip takedown, and then as soon as the fight hits the mat, then that's Polyana Viana's world. And yeah, I'm going with Viana in this one, just due to the fact that over the course of 3 rounds, I do think that at some point she will be able to get the fight to the mat. Like I mentioned, if they clinch up, if Cifers goes for a big overhand, the distance closes between them, Viana gets underhooks, gets a trip, takes it to the mat. I do think then she'll be able to show extensive groundwork and a fantastic grappling. We saw in the Cifers fight against Barber, I know that I was saying that she held her own pretty well, but when she was on her back in the second round, she was just getting busted up with elbows and ground and pound. Viana probably won't utilise the same sort of style as Macy Barber did with that ground and pound, but it does show that there is a potential weakness for on the ground there for Cifers. So for that reason, I'm going with Polyana Viana. I think she's going to get a submission win in this one, and I'm going for second round. I think first round will be a bit of a feeling out process, and then second round I think she'll be able to get her to the mat, and if she does it early in the round, I think she'll have enough time to work to the back and get the rear naked choke. I've got an all-out prediction there for you, even the method of victory. So yeah, I'm going with Viana, rear naked choke, second round.
Man, I mean, you mentioned Viana's striking looked basic in her last fight. Tell that to the guy that tried to rob her over in Brazil a couple of weeks ago. Man, that dude's face was a mess. But yeah, going on to the fight itself, I agree. I think it's a close fight, and I think it's a closer fight than the line suggests. You know, Polyana Viana's sitting at sort of like a minus 280 favourite, with Hannah Cifers a plus 240 underdog. I think the fight will actually be a lot closer than that, and I think it is a lot closer than that. You've mentioned a few good points there. You know, I'll echo anyway. Hannah Cifers, I think, has got the striking advantage. She doesn't, you know, just looking at her, she doesn't look too nasty or too dangerous, but, you know, none of that matters once she's inside the cage. She put up a great performance against Macy Barber, who people thought that she was going to get absolutely steamrolled in that fight. And, you know, it ended really bloody and it ended quite nasty, but, you know, Cifers was in that fight pretty much the entire time before, you know, the punishment really did start to come in from Barber. She looked like she had decent technique on the stuff that she was throwing. It wasn't the steamroll that people thought it was going to be. Now, that's where she'll beat Polyana Viana in the striking department. But the thing is, I don't think Viana will settle for that. I don't think she'll settle for being pressured, which I think Cifers potentially could do, you know, flurrying forward in bursts. I think Viana at that point will start to get the fight to the mat. Hannah Cifers has been submitted before. That was a rear naked choke as well. It's a submission Polyana Viana's got on a couple of her previous opponents. I just think at some point in this fight, I don't see Cifers knocking Polyana Viana out. So I just think at some point in this fight, before it goes the distance, Viana is going to get a takedown, or the fight is going to hit the mat at some point. And I think once it hits the mat, that's where we're in Viana's world. I think Viana will look and demonstrate that she is the better grappler, that she has got the better Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I think she will roll a little all over Hannah Cifers. I think she does take the back at some point as well. I just think it, like I say, if it hits the mat, that's where the biggest difference is in this fight for me. It's the ground game of Viana opposed to the striking of Cifers. I agree with you as well, John. I think she's going to get another rear naked choke. I think she finds a submission. So I've got Polyana Viana to win this fight, and I've got her to win via submission. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Marlon Vera versus Frankie Saenz. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I think this one's going to be an exciting fight, mainly due to the fact that pretty much every fight that Marlon Vera is in is exciting. It'd be interesting to see Frankie Saenz again in the octagon. I mean, he's 38 years old now. He last competed in May of last year, where he defeated Henry Briones by decision, unanimous decision. I think if you look at his record, he either wins via decision or loses via decision most of the time. I know he lost via strikes to Eddie Wineland back in 2016, but prior to that, you're going all the way back to 2014 before you've seen anything other than a decision, and that was prior to Saenz being in the UFC. So it'll be interesting to see, because obviously the lighter weight class is bantamweight. 38 years old, that is pretty old for the lighter weight classes, and we've spoke on this podcast before about how you can quite quickly at those lower weight classes lose your speed and things like that, and the athletic abilities that you once had. Obviously the impact isn't as great as the heavier weight classes, so it'll be interesting to see Frankie Saenz and how he is in there again. Like I say, he hasn't competed since May last year. I'm a big fan of Marlon Vera. He's like I mentioned, he's an exciting fighter. he can win the fight in a lot of different places. We saw with Luigi Buren, he was struggling in the first round of that fight, but then he came back with that brutal body shot in the second round and got the win. His last fight, Guido Canetti, first round again, he was a bit sluggish. Canetti looked good, had some opportunities, rocked Vera, but Vera came back to win second round early on with the rear naked choke. We saw the same when you're going back to the Brad Pickett fight back in 2017. Pickett was winning that fight. He won 2 of the 3 rounds, and then with just over a minute left, Marlon Vera pulled out that head kick and follow up strike. So he's a dangerous guy everywhere, and although there's only a 2-inch height of disparity between the two, I think Vera will utilise his long limbs in this fight, and I'm going with Marlon Vera to get the win. I think he's got a good array of kicks, he strikes, he'll use elbows if it goes in close, he'll use knees. Like I mentioned before, he's got good scrambles if the fight goes to the mat, which I think is where Frankie Saenz will want to get this fight. We saw that in his last fight, the victory over Briones. He was clinching when he got the opportunity. He was ducking under those the punches and level changing, and yeah, I think that Vera's going to be able to keep him at the end of kicking range. If he does get taken down, I think he's got good scrambles. I think he'll be able to get back to his feet, and yeah, I just think Marlon Vera is going to have too much for Frankie Saenz, and I do think that we're going to see Saenz get finished in this fight. Like I mentioned before, Vera can finish the fight anywhere. I do think that at some point he'll keep pressing, he'll keep putting the pace on Saenz, and I think just at some point he's going to wear on Saenz, and he's going to push him back up against the fence, and then maybe land one of those kicks, body shot, one of the elbows, but just something that will just set off the finishing motion that'll rock Saenz, and then I just think Vera will pounce then and fire away the shots until the ref pulls him away. So yeah, I think Vera's going to utilise his reach, utilise his height advantage. I wouldn't be surprised if he got taken down a couple of times. He does march forward. He does throw his shots with intent. Like I say, he throws a lot of kicks, so Saenz can catch one of the kicks. He can take him down off that, but I think he'll be able to scramble back to his feet, and yeah, then I think he'll put a pace on him with the strikes, and again, I'm going for the second round. I'm going with Marlon Vera to win by a knockout or TKO in the second round.
Well, I'll tell you what I think, because I was quite surprised when I went into tape with this fight. I assumed Frankie Saenz was a 38-year-old old man in a lower weight division that was probably on the crisp of the end of his career, and didn't really see where he could go from here. But actually, I was quite surprised when I looked into it, because yes, he is 38. He doesn't look like he's declining to me. He's a Division 1 wrestler that's got good striking as well. He mixes combinations, and he's got a good left hook to the body, following it up with a straight right. Now, the problem that he's got with that particular combination is I've seen him use it in multiple fights, so he does have to switch things up, because his opponents are definitely going to, if I've seen it, his opponents or his opponents' coaches will have seen it as well. Yeah. So he's definitely got to mix that up. But his moving's good as well. He keeps his head off the centre line. He keeps on his toes. He moves in and out well. He's not going to be as fast as Cheeto, but his movement is still decent. And I was actually really surprised with Frankie Saenz when I looked into it, because I didn't think that he was the fighter that he is. Now, the problem that I have with Cheeto in this fight, and you've alluded to it, but you didn't mention it, is he was down in the Brad Pickett fight. He was down in the Guido Canetti fight. He was down in the Luigi Buren fight. And he comes back and he finishes guys. This dude is not a round winner. He's a finisher, and that's amazing to watch. That's why he's got fans. That's why people like him, because he finishes fights. That's what he does. He's 2-5 on the scorecards. So generally, when he goes to the decision, he doesn't win it. He loses more often than not. but he's got a lot of finishers to his name, so he can be down in fights because he finds a way to come back and he finds a finish. Now, in my opinion, Guido Canetti quit in that fight. He was doing really well, and then when it got tough, he gave his back. Chito took it and submitted him. Luigi Bjorn got hit with a punch to the body, like you said. These things happen. It's not overly common for fighters to get dropped with body shots. I know we saw one last week, but it happens. The Brad Pickett fight was, that head kick that landed, like there was about 90 seconds left of the fight.
Yeah.
At what point does it start to become really tough for Chito to win fights? Because the more wins that he gets, the better level of opponent he's going to get, and the better level of opponent he's going to get, the harder it is going to be to finish that guy. Now, I think Frankie Saenz is going to be very tough to finish. He's shown he's got a good chin. Enrique Briones, he's not known as this fantastic striker, but the one thing he does have is a shed load of power in his hands, and he hit Saenz clean quite a few times. Saenz didn't wobble, he didn't show signs of being hurt. He has been finished in the past. He's been knocked out twice. Eddie Wineland finished him, but Wineland packs a lot of power, and he also got finished like about 7 or 8 years ago outside of the UFC. He's never been submitted either, so Frankie Saenz is tough, and it almost begs the question, if Chito Vera can't finish him, does he win a decision? And I don't know. I don't think he does. I think the movement of Chito is going to be something that Saenz is going to have difficulty with at some points in this fight. Not necessarily just at the start or just at the end. I just think throughout the entire fight, because I do see this going to a decision, by the way. So throughout the entire fight, I feel that he is going to have... he's going to have to adjust. He's going to have to make some in-cage adjustments to make sure that he's keeping up with the pace of he's cutting angles and all that sort of stuff. I think he can land takedowns. He doesn't go out to hunt them like your average D1 wrestler will. He'll use his takedowns opportunistic, but they're normally really reactive, and for that reason, he completes a lot of them as well. So I do see him landing the odd takedown. I don't think Vera's the type of dude that is going to stay on his back and be grinded out in full guard or anything like that. But if the fight's close, the judges will look for the little things to make them have an edge, to give them an edge in this fight of who's won. And it's little things like takedowns, even if there's been no top control or anything. If a takedown is something that the judges can use to give an edge, then they will do. I think it's going to be a close fight. The reason why I'm not massively confident in Frankie Saenz is because at some point, and you've mentioned it, John, due to his age, due to the fact that it's £135, I do think at some point Saenz gets made to look old, and we will at that point say, okay, this could be the start of his decline. Is his chin finally going? Is his body finally giving up in the sport? Because it's tough being that old and being a bantamweight. So at some point we're gonna get that moment, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was this fight with Chito that showed it was that moment, that gave us that moment that we saw, okay, this could be the end of Frankie Saenz, or at least the start of the end, But I'm picking Frankie Saenz to win the fight. I'm not completely sold that it is going to be that moment, and I think to say that, you are having to make assumptions of something that we haven't seen, and that's something that I always feel you can't rely heavily on, because we can only break down what we see. We can't make the assumption that this is going to be the fight that Frankie Saenz potentially starts his decline, because we haven't seen any signs of that prior. It could be, it's a possibility, but I don't think it is going to be this fight. I think Frankie Saenz is going to score the odd opportunistic takedown. I think he is going to be in and out. I do think he's going to lose a round at some point, but I think it's going to be a close decision. I think over the 3 rounds, he's going to get the nod on the judges' scorecard. So I've got Frankie Saenz to win this fight, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Gina Mazany versus Macy Chiasson. John, who have you got?
Yeah, again, this is an interesting one. Macy Chiasson, of course, competed up at featherweight in the Ultimate Fighter season 28, and then following that, we saw her get the win at the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale via rear naked choke, second round. Be interesting to see. Obviously, this fight's at bantamweight. Should be coming down, and be interesting to see. Obviously, how she looks bantamweight. Whether she's much bigger than Mazany, frame wise, and I know she's got a few inches height advantage over her. So I think that will give her the edge in this fight. If you look at Mazany's last fight against Lena Landsberg back in May of last year, Landsberg was strong in the clinch and was very just looked to overpower Mazany, and Mazany had a very tough time getting off the cage, and whenever she did, Landsberg would close that distance well and just put her straight back on the cage. And like I say, she had a really tough time of trying to get off the cage, and she just didn't seem to be able to manage that. And I can see this fight going in the same sort of direction, because we saw Chiasson in the last fight do a similar thing and press Chianzad up against the cage. I know she got the finish in the end in the second round, but she was heavy in the clinch in that fight, and she wore on Chianzad, and yeah, I just think that it's going to be the same sort of scenario. I just think that Mazany's not going to be able to get her back off the fence long enough to really have any real output that will swing the fight in her favour. I just think that I do think this is going to go to a decision. I think it's going to go the distance, but yeah, I just can't look past Macy working in the clinch. Just I think it's going to be a pretty ugly fight, a grinding fight, and I just think she's going to hold her up against the fence, just do enough to stop the referee from breaking them up, and just leaning on her for the vast majority of 15 minutes. And I don't think it's going to be a particularly pleasing on the eye fight, should I say, for the fans. But yeah, I think Macy's going to get the win. I think it's going to be a decision, and yeah, pretty quick breakdown from me, but that's just how I see it going. I just think watching both their last fights, the Mazany's weakness seemed to be Chiasson's strength in the last fight, and I just think it's going to play out similarly in this fight. So yeah, I'm going to go with Macy Chiasson to get the win via decision.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, man, and I actually don't think that Gina Mazany's weakness is against the cage and in the clinch and the grind. Lena Landsberg is obviously levels above where Gina Mazany's at right now, and
yeah,
I think a lot of the pressing up against the cage, there was a lot of there's technique that goes into that with your positioning and your balancing and your underhooks and overhooks and things like that. And I just think that Lena Landsberg did a better job. But man, Gina Mazany, and I was about to say the Mazanys, because her brother Dave Mazany has the exact same style. The gritty, ugly grinders. We saw that in Dave Mazany's last fight against Martin Van Staden. Van Staden was a great striker, and he just got pinned up against the cage. And it's similar to what Gina Mazany likes to do as well. They fight, both of them, brother and sister. They fight pretty much identically. But yeah, I agree with you, because Macy Chiasson is coming down. There is a question mark. The question mark that I do have is if this fight does go how I think it's going to go and how you think it's going to go. You've got to wonder if Macy Chiasson, with the weight cut, if that has an effect on her, because the clinching and the grind game is a type of fighting that wears quickly on fighters. If you don't have a great cardio, a great tank, gas tank, then it can affect you throughout the fight if that goes on for too long. So the question mark that I have is if this fight is a clinch grinding type fight and the weight cut takes its toll on Macy Chiasson, then I definitely think that Gina Mazany can take advantage and take over the fight because she'll be the fresher one. But I do struggle to see. I mean, we don't know because we haven't seen Chiasson down at this weight in the UFC, but I do struggle to see Chiasson really gassing out so badly in this fight that Gina Mazany does take over in the grinding clinch game. Like you said, there's not really too much to break down in this fight. I think the striking is going to be minimal. If it goes down to the mat, if it's Chiasson that gets Mazany down, then I think she could keep her down. I do struggle to see Mazany getting on top of Chiasson and really rolling all over her. I'm going Macy Chiasson to win this fight. I also think it's going to be a decision. Like I say, I just think it's going to be that grinding, ugly, gritty fight where they're doing just enough for the referee not to split them up, where the clock's ticking down, and whoever spends less time with the back against the cage is going to win the fight. I think that's going to be Chiasson. So I'm going Macy Chiasson to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Edmen Shahbazyan versus Charles Byrd. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is quite interesting. The fact that both these two guys have got the same last mutual opponent in Darren Stewart. So obviously Shahbazyan got the win, split decision at the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale back in November of last year, and Charles Byrd was on the receiving end of a defeat, second round, UFC 228 back in September of last year. And watching both those fights back in the build up to this, it was pretty much exactly the same game plan for both the guys. They were, as we just spoke about in the last fight, they were just wearing on Darren Stewart. They know he's a good striker, and Shahbazyan especially just was 100% clinching up against the fence, taking Stewart down as soon as Stewart got back up. Didn't give him any breathing space whatsoever. Was straight back on him in the clinch, trying to take his back. If you can't take his back, then just press him and hold him up against the cage, and basically just avoided Stewart striking at all costs, really. And Byrd in his fight, although he did engage in the striking a little more than Shahbazyan did. It was, again, a very similar approach. There was a lot of clinch work in that fight, and that eventually led to his downfall because Stewart caught him with an elbow coming off the clinch, and then he landed some powerful right hands, backed Byrd up against the cage, and then landed some more strikes and a big elbow that put him down, and that was it. Second round finish. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting fight because Byrd as well has got real power in his hands. That set up a lot of opportunities for takedowns and things. The fight prior to the Darren Stewart fight was an interesting one because he was coming up against John Phillips. Obviously, there was some big hype on John Phillips coming into that fight, making his UFC debut in that one, and everyone thought it was going to be a real stand and bang war between two guys with heavy hands. But Byrd played the game plan really well and took Phillips down, and Phillips looked lost in that fight, and he locked on a rear naked choke, and prior to that fight as well, he was in he competed twice on Dana White's Contender Series, picking up a rear naked choke and an arm triangle choke. So he's dangerous. Not only in his striking, he's not only got power in his hands, but he's dangerous when the fight does go to the mat. And it's a very similar story with Shahbazyan as well. I mean, this guy's only 21 years old. It's crazy to think that he's already got, I think, 8 professional fights on his record. He's 8-0. He just defeated Darren Stewart, who's been around in the UFC for a number of years. He fought on Dana White's Contender Series before that, and he defeated Antonio Jones via ground and pound 40 seconds into the first round. And that for me was possibly an early stoppage, but the ref stopped the fight, and yeah, you can't say much more than that. I mean, he landed a heavy shot that put Jones down, and then he just swarmed him on the mat. But this one for me is a really tough one to pick. And one thing that I did notice was Shahbazyan in his last fight against Darren Stewart was exhausted by the third round. He was really struggling. I think if that fight would have lasted another couple of minutes, I think Stewart could have put him away because Stewart was on top. Shahbazyan was turtled up. Then he rolled through, and Stewart was landing some ground and pound, and I think he could have finished him. And I do think in this fight that the wrestling and the clinch work may just cancel each other out, and it's going to be more of a striking battle. And from what I've seen, I think Charles Byrd has got the better striking. I think it was Daniel Cormier alluded to in the Darren Stewart fight that he looked good with his striking. He was patient. He was creating some good angles. Nothing too erratic. He was mixing in the head kick, which was nice. And yeah, I just think that he's got the experience advantage, and B, I think he's got the slight advantage in the stand-up exchanges, and yeah, I think that wrestling and clinch style will cancel each other out that we saw for both of them in the Darren Stewart fights. And yeah, so I'm going with Charles Byrd to win this fight. I wouldn't be surprised if the fight gets drawn out into the third round, if Shahbazyan if he drops off with his cardio and his output and stuff like he did in the Darren Stewart fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Byrd possibly put him away later on in the fight in the third round. I know he hasn't got any third round finishes on his record that I picked up, but yeah, he has got some finishes late in the second round, and yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if you put him away in the third round, Charles Byrd. So yeah, I'm going with Charles Byrd to win this fight via TKO in the third round.
Yeah, I'm going the opposite way, man. I like Shahbazyan to win this fight. Now, Charles Byrd for me is someone that I'm not totally sold on yet, and I don't know if I will be. I mean, the dude's 10-5. He's 35 years old now, so I can't. He's not massively old in the fight game, but like I say, at 35. I'm not sure how much he's going to be improving. He is at a good camp, obviously. Fortis MMA doing good things at the minute. He's team captain as well. I just think that if he is gonna improve his game in MMA, I just think that we have got more to see from him. Like, he's striking against Darren Stewart. I thought he was looking decent against Darren Stewart, his strikes were clean and his strikes were crisp, and he was doing enough to be winning the rounds. And he got caught and he got put away. It happens. He got caught with a brutal elbow just behind the ear. That sort of stuff, especially coming from someone with power like Darren Stewart, is going to put you away. But I don't know. There's just something about Charles Byrd. I can't really put my finger on it. I just feel that he's got a lot of room for improvement if the improvements are going to happen. Now, with Shahbazyan in that Darren Stewart fight, like you said, it's the common opponent. I don't think Shahbazyan was known as this aggressive striker that was exciting, that flurried in bursts and really put it on his opponents. But he came out against Darren Stewart looking like some sort of D1 wrestler, and he was taking Stewart down. Stewart was popping back up. He was taking him down again. That sort of stuff really wears on. Or should wear on you for from your energy and your cardio perspective. Now, flipping back to Charles Byrd for a minute, go back and look at his 2 Contender Series fights. He was taken down twice by Randall Wallace. He was taken down by Jamie Pickett, who was a similar sort of frame to Edmen Shahbazyan, sort of the taller guy. Shahbazyan is going to be taller than Byrd in this fight, so Jamie Pickett had that sort of frame. He was taken down multiple times in them 2 Contender Series fights, and yes, he did reverse position eventually, but I just feel that Shahbazyan's grappling is going to be at a level better than Randall Wallace's and better than Jamie Pickett's. I don't think those reversals will come as easy from Charles Byrd, but the fact that he was able to be put on his back is a worry in this fight, because we've seen Shahbazyan constantly take Darren Stewart down. Now, credit to Darren Stewart, he kept popping back up. His mat return was good. The reason why he kept on getting dumped back down in stages in that fight, I mean, all 11 didn't come at once, but it was a case of 2 or 3 would come at one time, 2 or 3 would come at another time. The reason why those 2s and 3s were coming with the takedowns is because his grip was insane. Like, once he had his hands locked, even when he put Darren Stewart down on the mat and he tried to grapple and take his back and Darren Stewart popped back up, the grip was still there. Darren Stewart couldn't break the grip, and that's something that is really key when it comes to wrestling, chaining takedowns, putting your opponent back down, keeping a hold of him, keeping the pressure on. And one fighter that does it the best that I've seen in martial arts today is Gregor Gillespie. That grip that the dude he has is because fighters can't break the grip, they find it hard to get out of the clinch, to break that grip and exit out. So they're constantly being put under pressure. I really like that from Edmen Shahbazyan. I think that's a tool that he's going to be able to use in this fight for sure. Now, just to address what you said, John, in respect to the cardio and the fact that he looked knackered by the 3rd round, which he did, I honestly believe that the cardio was affected just because Stewart nearly killed the dude inside the cage. You know what I mean? The Stewart hit him with some hard shots. He put him down. He was landing absolute bombs on him. Shahbazyan, I think, tired from that fighters do. Of course, you're gonna, you're getting beat up by a dude that hits like a truck. But what did Shahbazyan do? Yes, it was close. The referee was close to stopping the fight, but Shahbazyan stayed in the fight. He showed the referee just enough for the referee not to call the fight. He stood up and he took Darren Stewart straight back down. Took him down tired. He took him down hurt, dazed, probably concussed. That to me shows heart especially from a young 21-year-old. I just feel that with this fight, Charles Byrd's going to I think he's going to be the more technical striker. I do think Shahbazyan is going to land, though. He's going to have the height and the reach advantage, but Byrd's going to be made to work the harder in this fight because he's going to be the one that's going to have to get inside and close the distance to land the shots. But Shahbazyan's got a choice here. Shahbazyan can either stick on the outside and just pepper Byrd, as Byrd's trying to come in, really make him work early on to try and tire him out for later in the fight, or he can just say, you know what, Byrd, you're going to be closing the distance on me. That's doing me a favour because I want to take you down to the mat anyway. And he'll just let Byrd close the distance for him so he can get a hold of him, tie him up, get that clinch, get that grip, take him down. I think it's a good fight for Edmen Shahbazyan. I think he's gonna win it. I don't think he's going to put Charles Byrd away. I think he's going to win a comfortable decision on the scorecard. So I've got Edmen Shahbazyan to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got Diego Sanchez versus Mickey Gall. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it's the return of Mickey Gall against a guy who, in Diego Sanchez, that I really want to see retire soon, man. And I know that he's got his record.
Harsh, man.
Yeah, I do, man. Come on, he's 37 years old. He took a lot of punishment each time. I know his record actually. When you look at his last 5 or 6 fights, I mean, he's 3-3. He's got wins over Jim Miller, Martin Held, and then more recently Craig White. But yeah, prior to that Craig White fight, I mean, he got brutally knocked out by Matt Brown. That was horrendous, and then obviously he got finished by Ala Quinter again in the first round. UFC 200, he got finished by Joe Lozon in the first round, and yeah, for me, he got the win over Craig White just purely due to the fact that you could see it immediately. yeah, he kissed him on the nose in the weigh-ins, which really wound Sanchez up and gave him that extra 10% to go out there and get the win. But now you could just see the massive disparity between the two in the wrestling and ground credentials when those two faced off in UFC 228, and yeah, Sanchez just pretty much just wrestled Craig White from the off, and yeah, there's nothing Craig White could do about it. He couldn't get back to his feet. He was just stuck under Sanchez for the entirety of the fight, and yeah, that's Sanchez's world. That's the early days of Diego Sanchez that we saw, and And if he can do that to his opponent, then yeah, he can get wins, and there probably is still people that he can get wins over using that style. But I don't think Mickey Gall is going to be one of those people. I know that that obviously Mickey Gall's coming into this this fight off the back of the victory over George Sullivan by a rear naked choke in the first round. But prior to that, he lost to Randy Brown. And if Mickey Gall, we spoke about it in the George Sullivan fight, and I actually think I picked George Sullivan in that fight if I remember correctly. Because it's hard to gauge with Mickey Gall what level he's at, because when you look at his first 3 fights in his career, especially, you've got Mike Jackson, CM Punk, and Sage Northcutt. And Sage Northcutt, obviously, back in 2016 was very raw. Still, he was very he was still finding his feet, and didn't really have a ground game. Wasn't really training properly. He was still at college, I think it was, and he wasn't not taking his fighting as seriously, but he wasn't just in that complete mixed martial arts compete mindset that he seemed to step up after the Mickey Gall loss. And so it's quite hard to judge when, obviously, after the back of those 3 fights. Then he lost the fight to Randy Brown at UFC 217, and then he got back in the win column against Sullivan. And Mickey Gall's a good wrestler. He's very dangerous with his grappling. We know that. I think he'll be able to stuff takedowns with Diego Sanchez, and then I just think Diego Sanchez's chin is pretty much done. I don't think it's 100% done, because obviously we've seen him get some wins over the last few years, but yeah, I do think at some point Mickey Gall will catch him with something. And I know Gall's not known particularly for his striking and anything like that, but his striking is improving fight on fight. Whether his striking sets up a takedown for himself, possibly. Obviously, Sanchez has got fantastic wrestling, great takedown defense, but striking opens up lots of opportunities, as we've seen in many fights before. And it'd be interesting to see if the fight does go to the mat, whether Mickey Gall's grappling credentials, he's a dangerous grappler, will be better than Sanchez. I don't think they will be. I think Sanchez will be heavy on top if he's in the dominant position, and if Mickey Gall's on the bottom, I don't think he'll be able to throw anything up that Sanchez hasn't seen over the course of his near 40-fight professional career. But at some point, I do worry about Diego Sanchez's chin, and for that reason, I can't pick him to win a fight, because I do always, whenever I see him in there, I think at some point he's going to get clipped and put away, similar to what we saw in the Matt Brown fight, similar to the Al Quinta fight, and yeah, I'm going with Mickey Gall to win this fight. I think he'll land something that'll wobble Sanchez, and then yeah, he'll just flurry him and put Sanchez down and put him away. Yeah, I just can't back Diego Sanchez to go 3 rounds against someone like Mickey Gall, who is a decent wrestler, who has got decent grappling, and I know that against Randy Brown he was stuck on the bottom on occasion, so obviously that you have to bear that in mind. If Sanchez can get him down, he's got heavy top pressure. Will he be able to hold him down? If he does that for a round, though, obviously every fight starts on the feet, and yeah, like I say, I just can't trust in 2019. I just can't trust Diego Sanchez chin to hold up for the entirety of 3 rounds for me to back him to win a fight. And for that reason, I'm going with Mickey Gall to win this fight, and I think he's going to get a stoppage. So yeah, Mickey Gall is my pick.
Yeah, man, I'm going to echo a lot of the stuff that you've already said. Diego, I'd love to pick Diego Sanchez in this fight. I mean, what he did to Craig White, he could absolutely do the exact same thing to Mickey Gall. He could take him down. He could stay out of trouble. You know, Diego Sanchez has had 40 plus fights and he hasn't been submitted ever. So he hasn't had a submission loss in his career.
Yeah.
So to say that Diego Sanchez would get caught in, you know, an armbar or a triangle or a guillotine on the way down or anything like that, it's quite hard to make that assumption. As I've already mentioned tonight about assumptions, it's quite hard to make that because we just haven't seen it. We've never seen him submitted. So I do think his wrestling would be good enough to take Gall down, to keep him down. We saw Randy Brown have success against Gall as well on the mat. So it's not as if Gall is some sort of phenom that once you get him to the mat, whether he's on top or bottom, that he's going to submit you, sweep you, reverse you, you know, just completely dominate on the mat no matter where he ends up. He's not that sort of, like I say, he's not that sort of BJJ ace. He is good on the mat, obviously, we know he is, but this is a path to victory for Sanchez, and I think if Sanchez is going to win this fight, he's going to need to come out, not mess about on the feet, and just take it straight to the mat, like, instantly. Because even if he spends one round beating Mickey Gall upon, you know, from guard, postured up or whatever, I think that could be enough to take out any potential power that Gall might have of knocking Sanchez out later in the rounds. So then if he comes out in the second round exactly the same thing and takes him down again, he's going to cruise his way to victory for sure. But I cannot pick Diego Sanchez to win a fight because that chin, I've just... You know, the other argument to this is you know, the last set of knockouts, you've got Matt Brown, who hits hard, got a bunch of knockouts on his record throughout his career. Alai Quinta, the same thing, hits hard, bunch of knockouts through his career. Joe Lawson, again, not really known as a knockout artist, but, you know, he has knocked people out in the past, so, you know, it's not as if it's totally unheard of. You could make the argument that Sanchez is only getting knocked out by the guys that are known for knockouts, but Mickey Gall, even though he's got no knockouts on his record, I think that the wear on Sanchez's chin is just too much. Like, I've seen him knocked out brutally now twice in a row, and that normally from previous other fighters and previous other patterns, that normally reflects pretty badly going forward. You know, it's not often that a fighter gets brutally knocked out 40 fights into the career at the age of 37 and then starts to then improve and starts still being able to take hard shots on the chin. That normally reflects in a way that it's the chin's on a decline. Even if the fighter isn't, the chin's on the decline. So I just find it hard to pick against Mickey Gall in this fight. You know, I know he's never knocked anybody out in professional mixed martial arts, but I just think that he is an MMA fighter. He is going to be training. He's going to be working on his boxing and his striking day in, day out. He is still a professional fighter, therefore he's still going to be able to throw a clean, hard punch, whether it be to the standard of other fighters in mixed martial arts or not. That's not the point. I just think that a clean, hard punch can knock Diego Sanchez out. Do I think Gall can throw a clean, hard punch? Absolutely, I do. If Sanchez doesn't get this fight down early, or if he gets this fight down and Gall gets straight back up, I think it's gonna be too much for Sanchez. I think Gall's gonna find a hard shot from somewhere. It may even be a kick as well. I don't know. I just think something of some level of power is going to hit Diego Sanchez on the chin, and I think it's going to knock him out. So I'm going to take Mickey Gall to win. I'm going to take him to win by knockout. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Cody Stamann versus Alejandro Perez. John, who have you got?
Yeah, again another fight, another really good fight on the prelims. I mean, they've really stacked this card, and this is going to be a great fight as well. Cody Stamann, of course, was riding one hell of a win streak before he came up against Aljamain Sterling back at UFC 228, and And that was a fun fight. I mean, Aljamain Sterling did get the win with that ridiculous inverted knee bar, but in the first round it was back and forth. I mean, Stamann took Sterling down, and Sterling got back to his feet, and I think he took Stamann down as well. So yeah, it was an interesting back and forth in that fight, and yeah, he's going up against Alejandro Perez, who's on a good win streak himself. I think he's won his last 6 fights. Defeat some tough guys in over that stint. Eddie Wineland most recently via decision. Matthew Lopez he put away in the second round. Uriel Alcantara he won via decision. Andre Sukumta he won via decision. I mean, these are tough guys, but for me, the real thing that's going to make a difference in this fight is the wrestling of Cody Stamann, and I think that's going to be his key to victory, and I think that is going to be the way that he wins this fight. I mean, we saw Stamann get the win in the fight prior to Sterling over Brian Caraway, who's a good wrestler himself, and yes, Stamann got the better of him in that fight, and he's always got that wrestling to fall back on if needs be, and I think that will be the difference maker in this fight. And both these guys are similar heights. I think they're both 5'6". If Perez had a bit more of a height and reach advantage over Stamann, I might think that he'd be able to keep his distance and work from the outside. But I just can't see, similar to how you described the possibilities with Diego Sanchez in the last fight. If he gets on top, I think he can. I think Cody Stamann can be heavy on top and get a couple of rounds under his belt and get the win. He does have some power in his hands. I mean, we've seen earlier on in his career get some finish via knockout. I mean, he's short, he's very stocky, so he's going to have power in his hands. And but yeah, I think it's going to ultimately be his wrestling in this fight that wins it for him. I think he's going to be able to take Perez down. I think he's going to be able to hold him down, wear on top of him, and ultimately come out and get a decision victory. So yeah, I'm going with Cody Stamann in this fight. I think he's going to win a unanimous decision by utilising his wrestling, his strong top control, and yeah, just really nullifying anything that Perez has to offer on the feet.
For me, this fight is a very close fight. I actually went into tape really heavily leaning Cody Stamann, but you know, when I put all the pieces of the jigsaw together, I was really surprised what I came up with, and it's just a really close fight. Alejandro Perez wins some very close decisions. The one thing the dude does know how to do inside the cage and inside the UFC specifically as well is win fights. He's 8-2-1 in the UFC, which is a phenomenal record. He's got good boxing. He can use it forwards. He can use it going backwards. He can be taken down. Matthew Lopez took him down a couple of times. I think, though, Matthew Lopez is a much better grappler than what Cody Stamann is. So where Lopez had success in taking Perez's back and being able to wrap up the body triangle and look for the submissions and stuff like that, I don't think that's an area where Cody Stamann will flourish in this fight, even if he does try to. I can't imagine him, rolling all over Perez, taking his back and stuff like that. Perez has got a good mat return. He's got a good get-up game as well, plays it safe once he's got his back on the mat, figures out where he's at, and then methodically, logically works back up to his feet. And he can do that for 3 rounds as well. He's got really good cardio. And I actually disagree with one point that you said, John. I don't think Cody Stamann is a heavy top guy himself. He's got amazing wrestling. He can dump his opponent, and the advantage that he has is he can keep dumping. So he doesn't mind doing that. If he has to dump somebody down 10 times in a fight, he'll do it. But the fact that he does score these high amount of takedowns in fights it's a lot it's very similar to what I've described with like Colby Covington in the past. He's an amazing wrestler and he can keep getting the fight down to the mat, but he struggles to hold fighters down. And struggling to hold fighters down, having that trait, in my opinion, then matching it with Perez, that's notoriously good at getting back up to his feet, shows me we could see one of those types of fights where Perez is on the back foot, he's using his boxing, he's landed slightly more strikes than Stamann, but Stamann hits like 10, 11, 12 takedowns in the fight. I think it could potentially be a fight like that. Now, in that scenario, you then go to the judges, which is where I think it's going to head, by the way. Spoiler alert. I think it's going to hit the judges' scorecards. I think it's going to be that type of fight. And in my opinion, whether it be new rules, old rules, whatever, I just feel that when an opponent has been dumped that many times on the mat, if, like I said, if the takedown count is that high for Stamann, I do think that the judges will favour that as more dominant, as the slightly more strikes landed, especially while moving backwards. So I think it's a close fight. I think it could be one of those fights where it does go to a decision. It's a split. It's a close split decision. We all know, like I said, with Perez, he knows how to win fights. A lot of people argued that he shouldn't have won the Eddie Wineland fight. I'm a little on the fence about that, but I do disagree. Well, I do find it harder to see that the fight was actually a unanimous decision. I could have understood a little bit more of a split decision, but all judges were unanimous in 29-28, I believe. Again, a very close fight that he could have easily lost on another night. So, yeah, I think it's going to be another close fight. And like I say, I think it's going to come down to the amount of takedowns scored on one side versus the amount of strikes scored on the other side. I'm always going to favour the guy that dumps the other guy down the more times, and I tend to find more often than not the judges favour that as well. So for that reason, I'm going to take Cody Stamann to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Misha Cirkunov versus Johnny Walker. Quick turnaround from Johnny Walker here. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it's like you say, ridiculously fast turnaround for Johnny Walker. I made the very stupid mistake of backing Justin Ledet in the last fight, and yeah, he got put away in 15 seconds. So shows how much I know. But yeah, man, from what we've seen so far in his UFC career, Johnny Walker, win or lose, will be known as being one of those ridiculously exciting fighters I know so far in his UFC career. He's got that 100% record, winning Contender Series, and then put Khalil Roundtree away with that brutal elbow in the first round, and then followed that up, like I just say, with the win over Ledet in 15 seconds just earlier this month, and he reminds me a lot of one of Misha Cirkunov's former opponents in Volkan Ozdemir, and Ozdemir was, when he went into the title fight with Daniel Cormier, he's quite an unknown quantity, because he got several wins in extremely quick fashion. I mean, obviously he defeated Cirkunov very early in their fight. I think it was about 30 seconds into their fight, he defeated him, and then he went up against Jimmy Manuwa and did exactly the same. I mean, in 20 seconds he put Manuwa away, and they're both very similar finishes up against the fence, and yet Johnny Walker kind of reminds me a bit of him. He can put you away kind of in the blink of an eye if you're not paying attention for the entirety of their fight, and you blink and you miss it. I mean, that Ledet finish was ridiculous. It was just like a spinning back fist out of nowhere. I think he'd gone for some kind of hook kick, if I remember rightly, and then just followed it up with the spinning back fist and put Ledet away. And so it's going to be interesting to see, because it's hard to gauge these guys until you really see them in there for some time against a tested, well tested and well seasoned fighter in the UFC. And Cirkunov, he's kind of that guy. He's been around in the UFC for a number of years now. he's got a number of wins under his belt. I mean, he really needed to win his last fight against Patrick Cummins, and he did. He looked really good in that fight, actually. Took Cummins down and got the arm triangle choke in the first round. We know Cummins is a very good wrestler, and he made it look pretty simple in that fight. But yeah, the two fights prior to that, he got finished pretty brutally against Glover Teixeira and that Ozdemir fight, like I mentioned to you. So again, this is a hard one to judge, because on the one hand, part of me saying that Johnny Walker's going to do what he's done in his last two fights and what we saw Ozdemir do and put Cirkunov away really quickly, just with his brute power and just in one of those blink of an eye finishes. But on the other hand, if Walker doesn't put him away early, I know we've seen him go to decisions before in his career. We saw him go to a decision in his Contender Series fight, but that's not the level of competition that Misha Cirkunov is. And will Cirkunov be able to take him down and exploit a weakness on the ground? It's hard to tell, because we haven't seen that much of Walker. We haven't seen him really on his back. I know he lost via submission to Klidson Abru, who we saw fight recently in the UFC, but that was back in 2015. And Abru's a very dangerous guy on the ground himself. So how much can we take from that? I don't know. It's hard to judge. So again, this is one of those fights that's really hard to pick, because it's sort of an unknown quantity with Johnny Walker, because he's just finishing guys so quickly. And I'm going to go with the Johnny Walker hype train, man. I think he's got so much power in his hands, and he can finish fights in so many different ways that we've already seen. That I just see him. I can see him catching Cirkunov, similar to the way that Ozdemir caught Cirkunov, and for that reason, yeah, I'm going with Johnny Walker to win this fight, and I'm going with another first round finish. Now, I said that with confidence and intent, but yeah, it's not a massively confident pick. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw maybe Cirkunov expose a weakness in Walker's game and take him down and submit him. It's just the fact that it's such an unknown quantity. It's hard to either pick for or against that. But yeah, I'm going with Johnny Walker in this fight. I think he's going to. We're going to see another fun, brutal and powerful stoppage. So I'm going with Johnny Walker to win this fight in the first round via stoppage.
Yeah, man, I get the comparisons to Volkan Ozdemir for sure. The difference with that, though, for me is Ozdemir, we just didn't really have any sort of tape on the guy to look back from previous years, previous fights. We only had sort of like recent UFC stuff, and it was the fact that he was finishing guys weirdly and quickly, and we didn't really have anything to go on prior to the UFC, or not a lot anyway. Whereas with Walker, we do have a lot of tape in the past. Now, the problem with that, well, there isn't a problem with seeing previous footage, but the problem overall is Walker's only 26, so the previous footage that we've seen, he is going to be improving fight by fight with him being so young, and he will continue to do so probably until his 30s, so that's like 4 years worth of potential improvements from Walker. So the difficult part of gauging where Walker's at in regards to technique and previous holes, and we have seen him being taken down before, which I'll move on to shortly, is how much of that has improved. Now, I'll give you a great example, and this is something that I did want to mention anyway. I just didn't know how I was going to fit it into this podcast, but this is a good moment to mention it. Is last week with Michel Prazeres and Ismail Nordiev. Now, the one thing that I picked out from Nordiev was his deficiencies in allowing fighters to pass into side control and be heavy on top, and him being quite flat off his back, looking a bit like a turtle on his back, and not really knowing sort of how to get out of that side control position. Yet that was 2 years prior, so he comes in 2 years later into the UFC, fights an absolute tank like Prazeres, who's taken out some of the best fighters on the planet. Nordiev making his UFC debut too, and he's not only worked on his side control deficiencies, but he was fucking sweeping and reversing a third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So that's a good example of the level of what a fighter can do in such a short period of time at a young age. And although Johnny Walker's not 22, he's 26, it is still very young, especially for a light heavyweight. So we have seen him being taken down against Chet Kone. When Chet Kone took him down, he did spend a lot of the time on his back. He did make his way back up to his feet eventually, but he spent a good portion of that fight on his back. And then the fight before that, he fought a Polish wrestler called Makowiak. Makowiak took him down in round 1 quite early. Walker had absolutely nothing off his back. No submissions, no get-up game, no sweeps, no reversals, no urgency to stand up. Got grinded out the entire first round. The second round, Makowiak came out. He took him down again. Walker had nothing, no urgency or anything until a point towards the end of that second round where he did manage to get back up to his feet in the middle of the cage and literally clinched up and knocked him out with a knee. Instantly, like crazy to see. Also nearly killed the dude as well. So that I don't know what that referee was doing. Makowiak was out with that knee. Yet the follow-up shots were coming in 2s, 3s, and 4s. So I think they got the oxygen out from Makowiak and everything inside the cage. So, but that goes to show how brutal Johnny Walker is from a power perspective. Now this fight for me is quite hard to call because I've seen Johnny Walker get taken down. I've seen him controlled on the mat. Makowiak in particular was passing and transitioning on top of Johnny Walker, looking for submissions like arm triangles and stuff like that. Now, in my head, I was just putting Cirkunov in that position of Makowiak, and I think he'd have tapped Johnny Walker out. I don't, he's a world champion submission wrestler, Cirkunov. If he gets Johnny Walker on the mat, he is going to submit. I'm quite confident he's going to submit him if his back gets flat on the mat. But this is what I mean. We don't know where the developments and improvements have come from Johnny Walker. Like, would it really surprise me if Johnny Walker's improved since the Makowiak fight at the beginning of last year? I know beginning of last year it doesn't seem like a long way away, but he's had like 4 fights since then. So that's still improvement fight by fight. Wouldn't surprise me if he has improved on that and he has got some sort of get-up game or urgency to get back up to his feet. But honestly, I think this fight goes one of 2 ways. I think Cirkunov would be smart to come out early on trying to take Johnny Walker down. If he does, I think he submits him. If he spends longer than 30 seconds on the feet, I think he's going to get caught with something, or maybe not straight away, but Walker will find his timing and his distance very quickly, and I think from then he's going to put Cirkunov away. Ultimately, I'm going with the latter. I think Johnny Walker's going to knock him out. Like I say, it's a tough fight for me to call because I've seen huge deficiencies in wrestling and grappling, which is where Cirkunov definitely has his advantages in his own MMA game. So it's a tough fight to call, but yeah, I'm going with Johnny Walker as well. I think he does find the knockout before Cirkunov finds the takedown and the submission. So yeah, I'm going Johnny Walker to win, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got an awesome fight here. Headlining the prelims, we've got Jeremy Stephens versus Zabit Magomedsharipov. John, who have you got?
Yeah, man, this fight's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to seeing these two go to battle, and that's exactly what I think it will be, because Jeremy Stephens, we've seen so many times, he won't take a back step. He's more than happy to stand and trade with anyone, and from what we've seen with from Zabit Magomedsharipov so far in his UFC career, he's exactly the same. I mean, he'll throw all sorts of techniques at you. He'll come marching forward. He's got fantastic trips in the clinch, fantastic kicks. It's just going to be it's just going to be an action-packed fight from start to finish, and it is a real step up in competition for Zabit Magomedsharipov. If you look at his UFC career so far, he's fought Mike Santiago, Shayman Moraes, Karl Bochniak, and then Brandon Davis in his last fight, and that last fight against Davis, UFC 228, we saw another crazy knee bar that got the win from him in the second round. And Magomedsharipov is the favourite in this fight, but man, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Jamie Stevens got the upset in this fight and got the win. Stevens so crafty now. He's got brutal one-punch knockout power that we've seen before. We saw in his the two fights before, the Aldo fight, the Emmett fight, and the Doo Ho Choi fight. We saw him put away his opponents, and yeah, if Zabit's not careful, and we know he likes to go for crazy techniques and things like that. I mean, if he's not careful, he can get put away with one of Stevens' powerful overhands, and obviously he'll have to be careful of that throughout the entirety of this fight. And Stevens is a good wrestler as well, so it's going to be hard for Magomedsharipov to get this fight to the ground. And so yes, it is a really interesting one for me. It is a fight that I could see going either way, but ultimately I'm going to go with Zabit Magomedsharipov to win this fight. I think he's obviously, we know he's a lot taller, a lot rangier. If he can utilise that jab, and like I mentioned before, he uses a lot of kicks. If he can keep Stevens at range, I think he can do damage from the outside. He can rack up the points from the outside. I don't think necessarily that he's got the one-punch knockout power that obviously Stevens possesses. We have seen him finish guys in the first round. Back at Absolute Championship, a number of times, 45, 31, 24. They're all first round finishes, 2 via punches, 1 via guillotine. But yeah, it doesn't seem that that finishing power has transferred over to his UFC career to date, whether it's just a step up in competition. Obviously, the higher up you get, the harder guys are to put away. And yeah, I don't think Zabit will be able to put Stevens away. I know that Jose Aldo did, but yeah, Stevens generally is very tough to put away, and that's the first time he's been put away since 2012. And yeah, I don't see Zabit putting him away. I don't see him finishing him with strikes or anything like that. But yeah, I can see him working from the outside in this fight, and utilising those kicks, those long arms, legs, reach advantage, hitting him with elbows. And then the more that Stevens presses, the more that he starts, if he's getting frustrated and he realises he's behind on the scorecards, that opens up opportunities then for Zabit to get some of those trip takedowns. And yeah, we've seen from him before. I don't even know how you describe the technique. It's kind of like a step-in trip that he'll kind of half clinch you and half trip you all in like one motion. We saw that a couple of times. I think it was in the can't remember if it was the Carl Bochniak fight or whether it was Brandon Davis, but yeah, we saw that technique a couple of times, which is really nice. And yeah, and if Stevens, obviously Stevens is a lot smaller, so it's going to be quite hard to possibly to get in and clinch with him as easily. But yeah, I think if Stevens starts wading forward, if he's behind on the scorecards, that'll open up the opportunity for Zabit to get some of those trip takedowns that we've seen from him and spend a bit of time on top. But yeah, ultimately I think Zabit Magomedsharipov is going to have too many tools in his arsenal to win this fight. I think Stevens relies a bit too heavily on that one punch or one flying knee, as we've seen before, and things like that. That just that one strike finish to put guys away. And we see that quite often with guys who have that finishing power. They sometimes rely on it too heavily, don't set up the strikes enough, and just try and throw the bombs and put their opponent away, and that can sometimes lead them to fall behind on the scorecards and lose decisions if they can't land that perfect shot. And I think this will be an example of that. I think Stevens will be trying to put Magomedsharipov away. I think he's tough. He's durable, so I don't think he'll be able to put him away. I think, like I say, he's got good movement, good distance with the kicks and the jabs. So yeah, I just think he's going to outstrike him from the outside and just rack up points against him and win a unanimous decision.
Yeah, man, Zabit is an absolute phenom. He's on a 12-fight winning streak. Out of his last 10 fights, the only fight that he hasn't finished was Kyle Bochniak. But just a quick reminder that Zabit broke his right hand, I believe it was, in the locker room before he even stepped out to the cage in that fight. So
yeah,
he beat an aggressive, in-your-face Bochniak with one hand. So I'm not really surprised that he didn't finish Bochniak. Bochniak's tough to finish anyway. Even harder with one hand, no matter how good you are. But the dude's a phenom, and I think it's a really good stylistic fight for him against Jeremy Stephens. Now, we all know Jeremy Stephens. We all know how hard he hits, probably the hardest hitter in the division. If he catches Zabit, man, yes, he could definitely knock him out. Zabit has never been knocked out. He's only lost once. That was via submission. I don't see Jeremy Stephens submitting him. I don't think that's also a deficiency in Zabit's game. I just find it really hard to see Stephens winning this fight. Now, a lot of people are giving Stephens a lot of credit in this fight and giving him a lot of chance. And like I say, he could absolutely back Zabit up and land a shot, but that's much easier said than done. Stephens, for me, and a key thing in this fight is if Stephens can't get his game going, if he struggles to land that one punch, if he really struggles to start landing at all. I said similar things when I was talking to people about the Michael Venom Page and Paul Daly fight that happened a couple of weeks ago. I was saying the same things about Daly, and when these type of fighters can't get the game going, their IQ is quite high, so they start to realise and understand that they're losing the fight, and then that almost makes them worse because they start hunting, they start rushing, they start just wanting to land that one shot, not putting any decent movement together, not putting any combinations together, not putting volume together, not being smart. So the fight IQ sort of works against them in that respect, and Stephens, for me, is definitely that type of fighter. We saw that in the Renato Moicano fight. Moicano was landing kicks and running away, and it did get to the point where that fight got into the third round, and Moicano was legitimately running away, and you could see that Stephens was just getting so pissed off, like he was angry, like that he wasn't getting a fight, and you can sort of get that frustration. But from Moicano, he was playing the perfect game. And listen, when you're wanting to win a fight, especially at this level in the UFC, it doesn't matter how you win your fights, it doesn't matter how you climb the rankings and get to that number one contender spot in a potential title fight. You do what you need to do, and that's exactly what Moicano did, and it really frustrated Stephens. I think Zabit's going to be able to do the exact same thing. I think Zabit's movement is very elusive. His attacking arsenal's very elusive. I think he can keep out of the range of Stephens. I think we're going to be seeing Stephens swinging at air. The one weapon that I think Stephens has got that he should use early on is leg kicks, because Zabit's tall and the base is going to be there. Start kicking at the legs if I'm Jeremy Stephens, but Stephens does tend to do that. But just like a lot of fighters, where they start with leg kicks and you think, fucking hell, you know, they're actually implementing one of the best tools that you can use as an MMA fighter. You then get to the second round and realise, actually, I haven't seen a leg kick for a while. So I think Stephens follows that sort of pattern. So he might start with leg kicks, but I think those attacks will fade off. The other thing that I like from Zabit's point of view as well is his flashy spin kicks. Now, these aren't the sort of attacks that I would normally like to see in MMA, because once you spin, if your opponent times that, they can get the back, they can take you down, they can start timing things. But with Stephens being quite an aggressive striker, when he's coming forward to start setting up something, a combination or a mixture of kicks and shots to the body and shots to the head, and just any sort of attack, if Zabit throws a spin kick of some sort, it will stop Stephens. It'll halt Stephens in what he was about to do. Stephens will have to reset and then try to come back in again. And that's key for Zabit, just get Stephens out of his rhythm. So this is what I mean about stylistically, it's a good match for Zabit. And I've not even mentioned the ground game yet, you know. He's got an array of different types of takedowns. He's got trips, he's got throws, he can single leg you. The single and double, I think, is going to be a little more difficult in this fight, because I think Stephens does defend the basic and standard wrestling stuff pretty well, and he is smaller, so it's going to be harder for Zabit to get in on the hips. So I think the clinch and the trips and the throws are going to be the preferred method of takedowns. But just go back, for anyone that doesn't remember, just go back and watch what Zabit did to Shaman Moraes, because that shit was disgusting. Shaman Moraes is a legit fighter. I said it at the time. I said Shaman Moraes was getting disrespected at the time. He's been disrespected in every single one of his fights in the UFC so far. Yes, I have picked against him a couple of times, but that's not disrespect. I've still given him the level of respect. He honestly one of the most underrated fighters in the division, Shaman Moraes, and Zabit threw him everywhere. Absolutely dominated him, battered him from bell to bell, and then ended up submitting him. Not many people do that to Shaman Moraes. So I do think that Zabit can be elusive. I do think that he can get Jeremy Stephens frustrated. I do think that he will get Jeremy Stephens to the mat, and I do think he's going to submit him. So in this fight, I'm going to take Zabit Magomedsharipov to win via submission. Now in the next fight of the night, the first fight on the main card, we've got Cody Garbrandt returning against Pedro Munhoz. John, who have you got?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what mental state the former champion is in Cody Garbrandt, because obviously coming in to the fight off back-to-back losses to TJ Dillashaw at UFC 217, UFC 227, both times he was put away with strikes pretty much similar fashion as well. He was just too invested in that fight, I think, from an emotional point of view, and yeah, I think ultimately that cost him. Cody Garbrandt for me was the best Cody Garbrandt we've seen by a million miles, was that Dominic Cruz fight, and I think most people would agree with that. I mean, Dominic Cruz everyone knows he's elusive himself in his striking. He's got really unorthodox strikes, and he's hard to hit, and usually he cuts such angles, and yeah, he just lands on people without them even realizing basically where he's coming from, and Garbrandt made that fight look easy. Cruz couldn't land a finger on him, and that was because Garbrandt was relaxed, composed throughout the fight. But against TJ Dillashaw on both occasions, he didn't look like that. He looked like he was he was too emotionally invested, and ultimately cost him. And you have to also think as well now, what effect will those shots that he took, the two finishes, what effect will that have on his chin? Will that have any long-term effect? Only time will tell. Pedro Munhoz is a very dangerous guy. He's known for snatching necks, and if you give him the opportunity to take your neck, he'll grab it and he'll cling on until you tap out. We've seen that many times against Rob Font, Justin Scoggins, Russell Doan. He's a very dangerous guy, and he's starting to round out his game a lot more as well. We saw him defeat Brett Johns, and then most recently Brian Caraway at the Ultimate Fighter 28 finale. And yeah, it was a bit of a strange finish when I was watching that back. I'd forgot about that, and he was kind of just like just landing, kind of like if you were like drop kicking a football, like some of the goalkeeper when they kick the ball out of the hands, he's got just booting Caraway in the stomach, and he did it a couple of times and put Caraway down, and then just followed it with a few strikes. And I know Caraway was protesting the stoppage at the time, but yeah, he was hurting him with that. So Munhoz is getting more dangerous and well-rounded as well, and he's not just all about the guillotine. That's what we always people always think, and we always talk about when when we talk of Pedro Munhoz. But yeah, he's got more strings to his bow than that. But ultimately in this fight, I think Garbrandt's boxing and striking is, and just his speed as well. He's really quick. His hands are exceptionally fast. He's got a good head movement, and if he's switched on mentally and in a good place, in a good zone, not too emotionally invested, and if we see anything like the Garbrandt we saw in the Almeida fight, the Mizugaki fight, the Dominic Cruz fight, I think we're going to see Cody Garbrandt get the win in this one. I think he's going to be able to piece Munhoz up on the feet with his boxing, and yeah, I think he'll get a win. Munhoz is pretty tough. I mean, he hasn't lost. He's only lost via decision in his career to Rafael Assunção, Jimmy Rivera, and John Dodson. Sorry, who were three top-ranked guys. But yeah, I think it's going to go similarly. I think Garbrandt may play a little more cautiously after the two Dillashaw losses, because obviously those two fights he hurt Dillashaw and kind of rushed in and yeah, left himself open to counters. So yeah, I think we're going to see a bit more of a reserve Garbrandt. I think he's going to use his boxing to just beat up Munhoz on the feet. So yeah, I'm going with Cody Garbrandt to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, I like Pedro Munhoz. I think he's a good fighter, and I think he's a fighter that has improved massively and keeps improving. He's a fighter that's in your face. He's a fighter that's aggressive, and he will land on you. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how Cody Garbrandt's chin holds up, and I'm going to echo a few things that you've mentioned as well, John. If you think that this fight is going to go down with Pedro Munhoz not landing at least one clean and hard shot on Garbrandt, I think you'd be mistaken. I could obviously be wrong in that. I would be very surprised if this fight finished with Cody Garbrandt winning via stoppage or a decision, crazily, without Munhoz landing hard on him at least once. I think he's going to. He's that type of fighter anyway. Munhoz, like I've already mentioned, he'll be in your face, he'll be aggressive. So it is going to be interesting to see how Garbrandt's chin holds up, because after two knockouts back to back, it is always a question mark for sure. Now, the counter to that is the last fight with TJ Dillashaw. Cody Garbrandt wasn't actually knocked out. He got stopped on the feet. He was obviously blatantly hurt and probably didn't know where he was, but his body didn't shut down and he wasn't unconscious and on the mat. So there is that from the counter side, but man, it's hard to look past Garbrandt in this fight, because his speed and his boxing is just unbelievable, and it's probably the best in the division, especially the speed. I can't think of any fighter that's got hand speed quicker than Cody Garbrandt right now. Yeah. In the bantamweight division. I think he made a lot of mistakes in the TJ fight, like you've already mentioned. Emotionally invested is the exact phrase. You've said it, John. That is the exact phrase that defines both of those fights. And what I did is I went back and I looked at previous knockouts and just previous fights of Cody's, and I wanted to see if there was any sort of mistakes. I wanted to look for patterns in when he first got his fighter hurt to when he actually finished the fight, because in that last fight with TJ especially, he had TJ hurt and he rushed in and he threw 3, 4 or maybe even 5 of the same right hands at TJ, and TJ got hit with like a couple of them at first, and then he saw the next couple and he was like, right, okay, he keeps throwing these. He got out of way of those couple, and then the next couple he decided to counter, and then that's when well, that was the beginning of the end for that fight. So similar thing in the first fight with TJ Dillashaw as well. Hurt him, rushed in, tried to get the finish when it wasn't there, and ultimately he didn't get finished himself because of that in the first one, but it didn't pay off for sure. Now, the Dominic Cruz fight, I went back and watched that. Like I said, I'm looking for specifics now. Dominic Cruz, he dropped a couple of times, didn't rush him. Now, you can make the argument that Cody was just having the performance of his career and he was enjoying himself, he was having fun, he was dancing, taunting, making at the time the greatest bantamweight of all time, looked like an absolute fool. So he was just having a good time in there. So you could put it down to that. Then you go back to the Thomas Almeida fight. Now this was a key fight because Almeida was 21-0. And Cody, I think, was like 8 or 9-0 at this point.
Yeah.
So they were both undefeated. They were both knocking people out left, right, and centre. It was actually a really underrated and under-talked about fight at the time. He had Almeida hurt again on a couple of occasions. Not dropped him, but had him hurt. But instead of, he didn't rush in. He was patient. He was calm. He had no urgency in his eyes. It's almost like he knew that he had him, and it will come. And eventually, he just picked his moment to finish him. He knew when the time was right, and he went in and finished Almeida. Briones is another fight. Again, he was struggling to hurt Briones. Like he's hurt everybody. He's got a load of knockouts on his record. He was struggling for Briones. But he didn't rush in. He adopted a wrestling game plan at that point. The dude is smart. The dude has got good fight IQ. It's just like we said with TJ. I think it's just TJ. It was a fight he was emotionally invested in massively, and he paid the price for it twice. And he's not emotionally invested in Pedro Munhoz. I think Munhoz is going to come forward. I think Cody's going to really enjoy trading with Munhoz. I think he's going to get the better of the exchanges. Like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how Cody's chin holds up. But ultimately, I just think Cody's speed, Cody's technical boxing, and definitely his power is going to pay dividends in this fight. I think he's going to catch Pedro Munhoz. I think he is going to knock Pedro Munhoz out. And I think it's going to be Pedro Munhoz's first stoppage loss in his career. So I've got Cody Garbrandt to win, and I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the next fight of the night, we've got a good fight here. We've got Tecia Torres versus Weili Zhang. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Weili Zhang back in action. She's a really exciting fighter. I mean, people may not have seen much of her career before. May have just seen her in the UFC. I mean, the UFC debut against Danielle Taylor. She got the unanimous decision, but she didn't look as good or as dominant as we've seen her outside of the UFC before. But then she came back and she fought Jessica Aguilar back in November last year, and man, she just brutalised Aguilar. Got that first round armbar. She took her down early on in the clinch, and Aguilar's dangerous off her back. She's got a good jiu-jitsu background, and Weili Zhang just held her in side control for a couple of minutes, smashed some elbows into her face, jumped to mount, and then tried to lock on the triangle, switched position to the armbar, and got the tap. And she looked fantastic in that fight. And yeah, in her previous fights, I mean, she's got some very good finishes throughout her career via a number of different methods as well, via strikes, knockouts, submissions, and ground and pound, standing strikes. So it's going to be really interesting because she's going against Tecia Torres, who's always been pretty high rank female strawweight. So yeah, Tecia Torres is all about that speed, getting in and out quickly, landing shots, and getting out of there before she gets hit. And only 5'1", she's got to be one of the smallest fighters in the division. And yeah, she's going up against Zhang, who's 5'4", but will also have the reach advantage. And I think that's where Zhang is going to be able to dominate this fight and her key to victory. I think we saw in the in Torres' last fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she just couldn't land on her. She couldn't get near enough to her to land because JJ just kept her distance so well. Utilised her jabs, her front kicks, and yeah, if Torres can't get in and land on you, and you can keep the fight on the outside, you tend to have some success against her. The other losses in her career have come against top opponents, Jessica Andrade and Rose Namajunas. So she only loses to the best of the best. But I really feel that Weili Zhang is going to win this fight over Torres, due to the fact that I think she'll be able to. She's got very good striking. She's got very good movement. From what I've seen of the fights before, she throws lots of kicks. She can definitely keep the fight on the outside and avoid Torres getting in on the inside and landing her shots. And like I say, that's her key to victory, and I think that's the way it's going to go. And we did, like I mentioned in that last Zhang fight, we saw that she can, if the distance does close and the two of them clash and clinch, she's got throws and she's got trips and takedowns as well, which will obviously be in the back of Torres' mind. But yeah, I think ultimately it's going to be her striking that get to this win. I think it's going to be a tough night for Torres, trying to get in and land shots and get back out without Zhang either circling off or landing shots herself when Torres is jumping into range for us to land her strike. So for that reason, yeah, I'm going with Weili Zhang to win this fight. I don't think she'll put Torres away. Torres has lasted the distance with JJ, Jessica Andrade and Namajunas, like I mentioned, so she's very hard to put away. But yeah, so I think it's going to go distance, but I think Weili Zhang is going to get the decision win.
Yeah, man, I mean, at this point, we know exactly what Torres is about. She's a fighter that likes to dart in and out, quick strikes, kickboxing, taekwondo background. So, because she's so small, although she is quite stocky for a 5'1" strawweight, she has got a decent frame on her. She does dart in and out. She's very quick, and fighters tend to find it quite hard to keep up with that, because what you've got to do in that situation is catch her as she's coming in, because she'll be out before the blink of the eye. So that's primarily a game now. The one thing that I noticed a lot of when I was breaking this fight down, and looking at it from an analytic point of view, is Torres tends to rely a lot in her fights on her strength. Now, I know we've mentioned she's small, but she is strong. So yeah, she relies on the strength in the clinch. So she does pin her opponents to the cage, and she does work on them and grind on them with their back against the cage. And again, like we've mentioned earlier on, and we mentioned on multiple podcasts, just doing that little bit of work, enough for the referee not to split them up off the cage. She relies on that quite a lot, and she even was having some success against Joanna doing that, even though Joanna was much taller than her. In this fight, though, I do think that element's nullified, because Weili Zhang is, she's 5'4", but she's built. She almost looks like a flyweight in there. She's massive, and I do think she's definitely going to have the strength advantage in this fight. So I do think that when a fighter relies on a certain thing, because let's be honest, most of Tecia Torres' fights go to a decision, and she's 10-3, so she's prolific at winning fights via decision, and that's what she does. And what I've just explained there is a decision winning method. That's how a lot of grinding fighters win on the scorecards. But when you're taking that element away from something that a fighter relies on, it then starts to make the fight very tricky for that fighter, because they're not, they're going to be out of the comfort zone. They're not going to be able to win a fight in a way that they normally can win fights. So then that fighter has to revert to a plan B. And yes, she can come in and out of Zhang, but Zhang's got a nice Muay Thai base. She keeps her guard up at all times. She's disciplined in her striking to an extent. If someone offers her a brawl, she'll take a brawl. She doesn't mind that. But I think when Torres is coming in and out, like I mentioned right at the start of this breakdown, you've got to be able to catch her coming in, and I think Zhang can definitely catch her coming in. And if Zhang wants to stop her coming in, Zhang uses an array of kicks as well. So whether it be side kicks to the body, or whether it be throwing a punch and then quickly following with a kick, just little things to stop fighters from coming in. So she's got a really good gauge of distance, in my opinion. Now, if Torres does decide to come in and she comes in too close, Zhang can also clinch up with her. Like I've already mentioned, that's normally a strength of an an advantage of Tecia Torres in previous fights, but I don't think it's going to be here. Zhang, we've seen Zhang put fighters away with knees to the body inside the clinch. She's got brutal Muay Thai. She's got a good trip takedown as well. She's got a crushing top game, really solid on top. Torres, one of her deficiencies, if you go back and look at previous fights, is getting up from bottom. She had a tough time against Andrade. You can put that down to Andrade just being, a really top-heavy fighter. Rose Namajunas kept her down for the most part when she was taking her down, although those takedowns were really late in the rounds that they happened with, so there wasn't really too much time to completely dominate on top. But Michelle Waterson managed to stay most of the round on top of Tecia Torres as well. So this is definitely a deficiency in Torres's game. And I think if Zhang can get the fight to the mat, I think she can win the round on the mat. You know what? If she took Tecia Torres down and had a lot of time to work on the mat, a stoppage actually wouldn't surprise me. I don't think she's going to, because you made a good point of, she managed to not get finished by Andrade, and look what Andrade did the fight before that to Claudia Gadelha. Life-changing beating there. Torres didn't get that. She didn't get that life-changing beating. That's because she had the skills to avoid it, the technique to avoid it. So I actually agree with you. I think Weili Zhang's going to win this fight. I think she's got too many advantages, and stylistically it's a good fight for her. I do struggle to see her putting Torres away, but it wouldn't totally surprise me if it happened. But I am going to take the decision. So I've got Weili Zhang to defeat Tecia Torres via decision. Now in the next fight of the night, we've got Robbie Lawler against the newcomer, the one we all know, Funky Ben Askren. Jon, who have you got?
Yeah, this fight, before the fight, and I started looking into things, I was fancying the underdog Robbie Lawler in this. He's got decent takedown defense, and obviously we know he's got heavy hands, and he's a more powerful puncher, and he's the better striker. But the more I looked into it, I did a complete 180, and yeah, I'll be going with Funky Ben Askren with my pick. Askren comes into this fight 18-0, undefeated as a pro. He's only a couple of years younger than Robbie Lawler, but man, Robbie Lawler's got so many more years on the clock, and I just think that will in part have an effect in this fight as well. If you don't know about Ben Askren, I'm sure everyone who's listening probably does, but this guy is a legit dominant wrestler. I mean, he can take pretty much anybody down, and then when he does, he stays on top of you, and he finishes you either via strikes or he works and into a more advantageous position and locks on a submission, and yeah, having looked back at Lawler over the last few fights, obviously that last fight with Dos Anjos, I know he picked up that knee injury, and yeah, Dos Anjos just wore on him, and Lawler couldn't really offer much back because of his injury, and yeah, he lost that fight. But the fight before that, Donald Cerrone, he won that fight, but if I remember correctly, Cerrone did take Robbie Lawler down, and Cerrone has decent takedowns. People don't really think it, but he has got decent takedowns. But he's nowhere near the level of Ben Askren with his wrestling. He's a legitimate NCAA wrestler, and yeah. His striking is getting better as well. I know his striking isn't great, but he doesn't really have any issues with walking people down and backing them up against the cage and clinching and then getting the takedown from there. And he has got good double legs as well. And I just can't see him not taking Robbie Lawler down. Robbie Lawler will know what to expect. The fans watching will know what to expect, but I do think he started to open his takedowns up from the footage I watched. He won't just shoot in completely blind for a takedown. He will Askren will sort of set it with strikes, but probably not perfectly set it with strikes, but he will stand and strike first of all. He won't just go diving for the takedown straight away, which obviously then he'll catch you a couple of times because you're expecting that takedown, you're expecting to have to sprawl, and then when he throws out the jab or the 1-2 and he catches you a couple of times, that's then what takes you off guard, and then he lands the takedown, or then he'll work into the clinch, and he can get some. He's got some trip takedowns and some throws on the clinch as well. He's not just a standard single or double leg guy, and he trains with Tyron Woodley as well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So he's training with the best in the division as well. So yeah, I just can't look past Ben Askren in this fight. I think he will be able to take Robbie Lawler down when he gets on top. He stays on top, and he's heavy on top, and ultimately I do think he will. I think he'll beat up Robbie Lawler from the top, and I think he's going to get a stoppage win in this fight. I think he's going to. I think it'll probably be the second round. I think first round. Maybe a bit of a feeling out process on the feet. I think Askren will take Lawler down, maybe halfway, just over halfway into the round, do some damage on top. Then once he's got the time and everything on the takedowns, I think he'll get taken down in the second round. I think he'll work to an advantageous position, like I mentioned. Lawler may give up his back, and Askren just keeps hammering down the ground and pound and until the referee stops you. So yeah, I think we're going to see Askren put in a typical Askren performance, take Lawler down, beat him up with ground and pound, and get the stoppage win.
Yeah, it's going to be a quick breakdown from my perspective, because I see it going the exact same way. Robbie Lawler, I think, has got anywhere up to about 90 seconds in this fight to knock Ben Askren out, because I think when that first takedown comes, Ben Askren will be that dominant on top that even if he doesn't put Lawler away, it will really affect Lawler's gas tank, and he'll know that it's coming again anyway as soon as the fight starts back on the feet again, and it'll make him hesitant to throw. I think it's going to be one of those type of fights. But with Ben Askren, man, it's not as if, his striking isn't great. We know it's not great. We know it's not on the level of Lawler's, but it's not stopped him beating other great fighters, powerful strikers as well. Wins over Nikolai Alexakin, Andrei Koreshkov, Douglas Lima. That's not Diego Lima, that's Douglas Lima. He's fought really, really good strikers that could put him out if he was that deficient, and definitely to the level of what Robbie Lawler is right now anyway. I think Robbie Lawler's got a very small window to really. If I was Lawler, I would just explode from the first few seconds. Ben Askren's had a couple of years layoff, so to be in some sort of cage, he's gonna, probably need about 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe even the 90 seconds to just get his bearings and feel his way into the fight again. Like I say, after the layoff. So if I was Lawler, I would really be coming out like a bull in this fight and just trying to get him out of there instantly. Because if he doesn't, and if he's patient and tries to, get a read on Askren before he starts throwing, then it's just going to not be a good night for him. I don't think Askren's going to finish Lawler. I think Lawler's too tough. Like I mentioned, the layoff as well. I think that might come into I don't think it'll come into effect that it'll affect a winning performance, but I just think that Askren might appreciate 15 minutes in a cage. I mean, hypothetically, if Askren took him down in round one and subbed him or TKO'd him in that first round, then I think that might be quite detrimental to Askren. I think Askren would want the 15 minutes in the cage just to have that time back in there, especially when it's your UFC debut, a long-awaited UFC debut as well. And I'm so glad, by the way, that this fight is happening, because we've seen in the past, like, there was always the what ifs and the buts and the question marks surrounding Fedor at heavyweight. What would he be like in the UFC? And it's the similar questions, and things surrounding Askren as well, and I'm glad we finally got to see it. I think we are going to see a wrestling dominant performance. I think, like I say, I'd be surprised if Lawler did finish him, because I think he's got a very small window to do it. So I'm going to take Funky Ben Askren to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now in the co-main event of the evening, arguably the people's main event of the evening, we've got the welterweight title fight, Tyron Woodley versus Kamaru Usman. John, is it Ann still, or is it Ann new?
Yeah, this for me is probably the most interesting fight on the card, just due to the fact that the styles going against each other, and we know what Usman's all about. He's a very dominant, heavy wrestler who will just take people down, wear on them, and beat them up on the ground, and just be relentless in that wrestling, and not stopping. And we've seen that in so many fights previously throughout his UFC career. I mean, Dos Anjos in his last fight, Damian Maia, Emil Meek, just so many. Sean Strickland, Wally Alves, just everyone he comes up against, it's the same outcome. And yeah, he's going up against another very good wrestler in Tyron Woodley. So this is how I see it. I see Woodley as a better version than Kamaru Usman. So Usman for me is no disrespect intended, for this is a poor man's Woodley. However, I think that Usman has the ability and the gas tank and the cardio to do what he does over the majority of 5 rounds, whereas Woodley, I do worry about, because a lot of his fights, we saw in Darren Till, saw it with Damian Maia, we saw it in this Wonderboy Thompson fights. They're very slow paced, and which suits Woodley to a T. But if Usman comes out, I think Woodley's definitely got the striking advantage, and definitely the knockout power advantage. We saw that with he put Darren Till down, he put Wonderboy Thompson down a couple of times, he put Robbie Lawler away to win the belt with strikes. So he definitely has the power advantage with strikes. I think he's also the more technical striker. But if Usman is in his face constantly from the first bell, whether he'll be able to take Woodley down, I don't know. Because, like I said, Woodley's a really good wrestler himself. He's got good, solid takedown defense, and yeah, he's a very hard guy to take down. I mean, Damian Maia, although Maia's wrestling is very good, it's more so his grappling that's good, rather than his direct wrestling credentials. When you think of wrestling such as like Woodley, Usman, Colby Covington, Ben Askren, as we just mentioned, he's not that kind of wrestler. He's just kind of grab hold of you and take you back or take you down that kind of way. So but Tyron Woodley stuffed every single takedown attempt of Damian Maia. So it's really interesting. If Usman comes out and he's pretty hesitant, Woodley wins his fight for me. I think he's he's the better striker, and yeah, I think he'll just get another decision win to add to his record. But if Usman really comes out and pushes the pace, and although he doesn't take Woodley down, he constantly threatens with the takedown, maybe spends some time pressing him against the cage, and then mixes in some, when Woodley starts trying to preempt the takedown and defend them, if Usman throws in some strikes and mixes it up, he can make this a really interesting and tough fight for Tyron Woodley. But ultimately, I'm going with Ann still. I think that I just think, like I mentioned previously, I just think Woodley's a better version of Usman. I think they're very similar fighters, a very similar style, but I just think Woodley does it better. And yeah, unless Usman does something to really wear on Woodley, so the fact that Woodley's gas tank is always questionable if you pressure him enough, unless Usman does something in the first 3 rounds, first to really wear on Woodley and then can start taking over from the third, fourth, fifth round. I see Tyron Woodley winning his fight. I see him getting another decision and and still. So I'm going with Tyron Woodley to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, it's a fascinating fight, man. The bigger picture of it is, I just think it's either going to be Tyron Woodley early or Usman later on in the fight, because I do feel that the biggest disadvantage that Tyron Woodley has in this fight is his cardio and his gas tank, especially down the stretch. Now, I do agree with a lot of the points that you're making in regards to Usman sort of not being as good of a striker, quite as good of a striker as Woodley. Not sure about the wrestling, man, because Usman's still credentialed massively in his wrestling, and when you actually have a look at the accolades of both of them, they are very similar. So I actually wouldn't give the wrestling edge to Woodley. The grappling edge, I would potentially give to Woodley, but the bottom line is, if one of these fighters gets on top, I think the other fighter's going to struggle, whichever way round that is. If Woodley takes Usman down, I think Woodley will have a lot of success on top, and I think if Usman takes Woodley down, Usman will have more success on top. Now, again, I ultimately agree with you. I think it depends how Usman comes out in this fight. If he comes out tentative and allows Woodley to actually come forward a little bit more, because we saw Woodley quite aggressive against Till early on. Now, I don't know whether that was because he knew there was absolutely no danger of Till sort of taking him down, or he felt like Till was deficient, really close in boxing range, as Till's more of a Muay Thai fighter, so he likes his distance. I'm not sure why he was sort of more aggressive against Till than what he was in previous fights, but I actually think that could work well for Woodley here. If Woodley comes out and he's aggressive early on against Usman, I think Usman could have some issues. But I'm actually going for Usman in this fight. Now, a lot of people are obviously on Woodley. A lot of people are strongly on Woodley as well. But I just think that with Usman's got a style that Woodley's not seen, potentially ever. Like, I know he's had a lot of fights, but when you look down his record, the only two fighters that I can see that have wrestling credentials is Josh Koscheck, but Koscheck didn't even attempt a takedown in that fight before he got knocked out. It was quite a quick knockout. Obviously, Woodley's got the power advantage. I definitely agree with you in that respect. Going back to the list, the other wrestler with wrestling credentials that I can pick out from what I can see anyway is Nathan Coy, and that was all the way back in 2010 in Strikeforce. So definitely Usman is on a better level than Coy and Koscheck were at the time that they fought Woodley. So this is in my opinion, this is the best wrestler that Woodley has ever faced. And Usman isn't just the D2 wrestler that's dominant. Usman's a guy that will grind if he needs to as well. He doesn't, when he's in the clinch and he's got you tied up, he doesn't need to take you down. He looks for the takedown, so if he doesn't get it, he doesn't back off, reset, and then come again for a better entry on a takedown. He'll stay in the clinch and he'll just grind on you. He's powerful, he's big, he's 6'4". I think he is going to be stronger than Tyron Woodley inside the clinch. And with Woodley trying to work off his back against the cage, I think it's going to drain his tank. I think it's going to wear on him, and I think we see that there's two sides of victory in this fight. There's, like I've already mentioned, there's Woodley early on with the knockout, or it's Usman by wearing Woodley out and winning down the stretch. And I think the latter is what's going to happen in this fight. The one worry that I have for Usman is in the RDA fight, a fight that he absolutely dominated, by the way, and his striking looked good. He found his distance well. He was in and out nicely. He wasn't getting hit by too much. I think RDA's quicker than Woodley. I think his array of attacks is also way more vast than Woodley. He doesn't hold the power Woodley has, but as a dynamic striker, RDA is definitely more dynamic than Tyron Woodley, and Usman handled that pretty well. But the one thing that I saw in Usman that I didn't quite like is he hung around a dangerous distance just a little bit too long at times. So the distance where a straight punch could land. Now with RDA, you could get away with that because RDA naturally, I think, is probably a lightweight. So Usman's probably being punched harder than what RDA can punch, so he could get away with that. He can't get away with that in this fight with Tyron Woodley, though. If he stays a little bit too long in this range and Woodley cracks him, it's going to hurt. It could drop him, it could knock him out. But listen, Kamaru Usman, this is something that I've not really seen anybody mention. Kamaru Usman works at Hard Knocks 365 with Henry Hooft, who is an amazingly decorated kickboxer and striker himself, and a great coach. If anybody's, and you can see that Usman's developed his striking over the last few fights as well. If anybody can develop a fighter's striking abilities, it's Henry Hooft, man. He's good at what he does. He's got a lifetime of experience, and he's passing that on via coaching now as well. He's going to have Kamaru Usman prepared for the striking of Woodley. It's not as if Woodley's really elusive and he's hard to emulate. The only thing Woodley's very sneaky with is he sets traps. So he sets traps on you as by stepping back, getting you to move forward, and then bang, the punch comes in. But Henry Hooft's going to know and have seen all that sort of stuff. I just don't think Tyron Woodley's that hard to game plan against, especially when you've got a good striking coach. Now, I think the game plan for Usman is not going to be to come tentative, not to mess about striking too much. I think it's no secret right now that what you need to do is wear Tyron Woodley out and wear him out quickly, because we've seen him tire late in fights, and I just think if Usman closes that distance in the first round and spends the first round wearing Woodley out without giving Woodley a chance to land that punch, I think that sets Kamaru Usman up for a great fight in this fight. And honestly, I think that's what happens. I think Usman closes the distance early on. I don't think he messes about too much. He may get a couple of takedowns early on. He may not. If he doesn't, he'll just grind. He'll make Woodley try and reverse position on the cage, try and get him off it. Try and make Woodley try to get him off him. He'll make Woodley defend takedowns, like I say, even if he doesn't score him. He'll just make Woodley work. And coming into that second round, it'll be that little bit easier. I think he'll follow the same game plan again. I think this time he may get a couple of takedowns. And I just think as the rounds go on, I think it'll just get that little bit easier for Usman each round. I think Usman's going to win the fight, man. I've said for a while now that at some point, whenever Tyron Woodley gets dethroned from being the welterweight champion, I think it's going to be Usman and Colby that run this division because of how good they are and of how dominant they are in the wrestling department. The passing of the torch is going to happen at some point, and if Tyron Woodley can get past Usman, and hypothetically if he gets Colby after that and gets past Colby, I don't know when he's going to get dethroned, but I'm pretty certain it's going to be either Usman or Colby that takes that belt off Woodley. And I just think it's the time, man. I think Usman's solid, he's big, he's strong, he's got a good team around him, he's developed his striking well, which he needed to do. He's a grindy wrestler. Yes, the wrestling might cancel each other out, but like I say, I think the pressure and the pace is key in this fight, and the pressure and the pace is what's eventually gonna beat Woodley. No matter who you are, you've got to have pressure and pace to beat him. Now, Woodley, people have mentioned, he always seems to find a way. Against these new styles, he always seems to find a way to win, and he does. That's correct, but if any style is going to stop him, it's going to be a style that's similar to him against a fighter that can put pace and pressure on you, and I think that's Kamaru Usman. So for me, I think it's Anu. I'm going with Kamaru Usman, and I'm going to take him to win by decision. Now, in the main event of the evening, we've got the returning Jon Jones against Anthony Smith. John, who have you got in this one?
Yeah, man, I'm finding it difficult to not wrap up my answer in 10 seconds, but I'll try and make it a little longer. But yeah, it's not going to be much longer, unfortunately. There's a reason why Anthony Smith is such an underdog in this fight, and the resurgence story we've seen from him has been fantastic. But when you look at the guys he's defeated, Rashad Evans, and he's been done for a long time. Shogun Hua, similarly, he's on his way out. Unfortunately, his better years are long behind him. The Oosterdamir win was a good win, but like round 3, both those guys were out on their feet, and Anthony Smith. This is a fantastic moment for him. He's going up against arguably the greatest fighter of all time in Jon Jones, but there's a puncher's chance, and that's it for me. If Jon Jones doesn't take Smith seriously, and Smith has got heavy hands, he can put people away with his hands. That is the only way that Anthony Smith is going to win this, and he's going to have to do it early, I think. But yeah, for me, Jon Jones is going to win this fight, and I think he's going to win it comfortably. We saw him last compete, like you say, as recently as December, where he put away Gustafsson. He looked superb in that fight against Gustafsson. I picked Gustafsson to win that fight, but yeah, he looked great in that fight. And yeah, I think Jones will just utilise his wrestling. I think he'll realise that Smith's only chance is to land a bomb out of nowhere when Jones isn't really at full concentration. And yeah, and I think for that reason, I think Jones will utilise his wrestling. I think he'll utilise it early. I think he'll go in, throw a couple of those oblique kicks to the leg, and then as soon as Smith even motions to throw a heavy hand, I think Jones will just level change, get the takedown, land those brutal elbows that he does. I think he'll put Smith away pretty early. I wouldn't be surprised if he put him away in the first round. If not, I don't think he's going past 2 rounds. And yeah, that's pretty much all the breakdown I can have for this fight. I just think Jones is far superior in every element. And yeah, I think Anthony Smith, the only way he can win is by landing a big heavy shot that rocks Jones. But Jones is tough, man. We've seen Gustafsson throw everything he has at him over the course of a couple of fights. Daniel Cormier, Vitor Belfort, Lyoto Machida, Rampage Jackson, Shogun Hu, and these are the guys when they were in their prime as well. They're not guys that like, it's not the Shogun Hu that Anthony Smith is fighting now. So yeah, Jon Jones is going to win this fight. He's going to get the stoppage. It's going to be round 1 or 2 for my liking. So yeah, and still again for me.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Anthony Smith here, and I'm glad that he's got this title shot. It is it's going to be a very one-sided fight, or very likely to be a one-sided fight. There's levels to this game, and Jon Jones is levels above Anthony Smith in every department and every aspect of mixed martial arts. But this is a sport in MMA where fighters don't always get what they deserve, and you know, some may argue that Anthony Smith doesn't deserve this shot, but I would definitely argue against that. He's moved up. Yes, he's beat Rashad, who's now retired, and Shogun on his way out, and Ozdemir. But the fact is that he's gone from a fighter that was barely unknown to a fighter that's now fighting arguably the greatest fighter that's ever lived on the main event in Vegas. You know, I'm glad that he's got this shot, because if he does beat Jon Jones, man, what a moment! Like, it would be a special moment, but I don't see it. And I almost, in fact, I don't almost, I definitely agree with what you said, John. It's how serious Jon Jones takes this fight. If he takes this fight deadly serious, and he wants to come out there, not mess about, not play around, and goes out there to finish Smith as soon as possible, then yeah, I think we see him go out there, throw a couple of kicks, take Smith down and submit him, or ground and pound him. And I think that will happen. It could even happen within the first half of the first round if he takes it deadly seriously. But there's another side of me in the back of my mind thinking, could this be a potential similar fight to the fight that he had with Overeem St. Preux when he came back from that layoff, and he went 5 rounds with St. Preux, and everyone was surprised at that. But it was just a perfect point scoring performance from him. He didn't look like he wanted to rush in for a finish. He just wanted to get the rounds under his belt and put on a perfect performance, which it was. He barely got hit in that fight over 25 minutes. That's a possibility with Anthony Smith. I've just got something in the back of my mind thinking that we could see that type of performance. However, I'm inclined to believe, after he finished Gustafsson impressively and looked good in doing so, that Jon Jones is back in the game. He's back to prove a point. He wants to put away fights. He wants to solidify his legacy and his potential greatest of all time status, number one pound for pound status, and he does that by going out each time trying to look for a finish. Sometimes the finish might not come, and that's fine, but having a potential finish there and just deciding to go 5 rounds doesn't look great. I think he knows that. I don't really know how to break this down anymore. He's the better striker. He's the better grappler. He's the better wrestler. He's better in the clinch. He's quicker. He's arguably got the stronger punch. We know Anthony Smith hits hard. He's more dynamic. He's more elusive. Jon Jones is the full package. There is a reason why, in my opinion anyway, he's the greatest of all time and the number one pound for pound fighter. So I've obviously got Jones to win. How he wins, I'm not sure. I think it's going to be on the mat, either like I said, TKO or submission. For the sake of the pick and not sitting on the fence, I'm going to take Jon Jones to win. I'm going to take him to win via submission. And that's all she wrote for the fight breakdowns, guys. But we move on. First thing I'd like to kick this off is with Jon Jones himself. We've just been speaking about him in the breakdown. I want to talk about him again in more detail because it's crazy that we're now seeing him again. We only saw him back at UFC 232. It was like December 29th, so it was only a couple of months ago. Prior to that, it was like a year prior to, he was fighting sort of once a year from 2000, at the end of 2013, he fought in 2014, then 2015, then once in 16, once in 17, once in 18, and already we're seeing him a couple of months later. I love it, man. This is what we want. Like I said, and I've been saying for a while now, I would give anything to have fighters such as Jon Jones and Conor McGregor. I know there's a lot of controversy. People love him and hate him, and same with Jones. People love Jones, people hate Jones, just for obvious reasons. But the bottom line is, this sport becomes much greater when we have the most exciting fighters, whether you love them or you hate them. It's popularity, it's PR for these fighters. And I would give anything for these sort of fighters to be fighting 3 or 4 times a year. And hopefully this is the start of something new for Jon Jones. Hopefully he goes out here. Hopefully he dispatches of Smith how he should dispatch of him, probably relatively early, and then without taking too much damage, you can jump back in again in a couple of months' time if you wanted to. The next fight, potentially, we could be looking at Thiago Maheta Santos, which would be insane. So after that, it could light heavyweight. I mentioned last week with it being a little bit sunk like heavyweight, but it's slowly filling back up again with talent. So it's an exciting time because all this raw new talent, young talent is coming in, and they've actually got the king at the top of the division there now. It's not sort of like you Gustafsson or you Cormier. I'm not saying they're not good fighters, but you've got the guy that everyone wants to fight in Jon Jones. You've got him at the top of your division. So what a better time to start filling up your shallow division with new raw young talent coming in with the king of the crop at the top. So I'm super stoked that we potentially got Jon Jones back now. I just hope these drug tests just stay clean. And it made me laugh the last time we were breaking Jon Jones and Gustafsson down, where I was actually just in the middle of saying the sentence, he's definitely going to pass tests, and then you'd gone onto Twitter and found out that they'd just moved a fucking event because he failed the test. So that was quite funny that we sort of got a bit of a live reaction from that. I just hope all that sort of stuff subsides now. I just want to see Jon Jones fight, man. That's all I want to do. What he does outside of the cage, he's he's not really my concern, to be honest. Obviously, when it's bad stuff like hitting pregnant women and driving off, then that's not good, and nobody wants to see or hear about that. Nobody wants it to happen, first and foremost, regardless of seeing and hearing about it. Nobody wants that sort of stuff to happen. I just want Jon Jones to stay in the right lane, on the straight and narrow, away from failing drug tests, away from being a criminal outside of the organisation, and just focus on fighting, man, because he is so exciting and he's still got so much to give to this sport as well. He's not close to a decline. You could argue he's not as good as he once was, but, you know, if he fights 4 times this year, then 2020 he could be back to how he was before. I just feel that since he was beating the likes of Belfort, Sonnen, Gustafsson, Teixeira, since he was putting all these guys away, it's been really stop-start for his last few fights, and I just want him to put a run together where he can gain momentum, he can gain form, and we can just see the old Jon Bones Jones come back to what he was like. So, what's your thoughts on him, John? Where do you see things going? Do you see some more stopping and starting going, some more failed drugs tests, some more lawsuits? You know, what's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, he's the kind of guy that you can never predict what you're going to get next from him. But yeah, I'm really just going to echo everything that you said. I really hope that everything regarding Jon Jones outside the octagon has finished, and we just get to see him doing what he does best, and that is competing in the UFC and showing the world why he is arguably the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. And I don't want to curse it and say I think that that we'll see a good run of him just getting in there.
There's just something breaking on Twitter now, John.
Please don't say that.
I'm joking.
Thank the Lord. But yeah, I do feel that maybe we see him get a good run of fights going without any incidents, outside incidents, and we can just see him doing what he does and beating people up in the cage and just impressing us with his talent. And I think there'll always be a cloud over Jon Jones now, and obviously the failed drugs tests, the incidents outside of the octagon, and in some people's eyes, I think his legacy will be tainted. But yeah, for me, I just want to see him. I would just want to see him fight. I want to see him quick turnarounds like this. Obviously, he can't fight every 3 months, but yeah, if he fights another couple of times this year, gets three fights in this year, and yeah, before including the December fight. If you go like December to November this year, and yeah, he's the best guy in the division without doubt, and it's good just to, like you say, have the champion back, because when Cormier was the champion, yeah, he was the champion. He's a fantastic fighter, Daniel Cormier, and he's a real good role model. He's the complete opposite of Jones. He's a real good role model for young up and coming fighters and just youngsters in the sport. But it something just didn't feel right, because he hadn't beat Jon Jones for the title, and yeah, there's always that question mark over him being the champion. But yeah, as you said, it's just great to have Jon Jones back. Great to have him back fighting, back doing what he does. Hopefully, everything outside the octagon will be quiet, and we can just watch him go to work inside the octagon. So, fingers crossed, that's what we get for the next couple of years at least.
Absolutely, man. And the thing is as well with Jon Jones, if he can do that, if he can stay out of trouble and out of all the things that we've spoken about for at least the next 24 months, he's going to have a lot of prospects that are then going to have built up winning records, development, and wanting to take his head off. So we've got prospects like Dominic Reyes, Alex Rakic, Alonzo Menifield, potentially Johnny Walker. You know, we've got these exciting guys coming in. The only thing that's holding them back from this top 5 is just experience. You know, they need more fights at the top level. They need more finishes, more confidence. The development comes with all that anyway. So not only is it great to have the champion back, and if we can keep the champion back for a couple of years, that'd be awesome. But because at the minute, Jon Jones beats the top 10, like, pretty comfortably, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But when it becomes the top 5 in 2 years' time, that's going to be totally different, because we're going to have these fighters on form, hungry, developed, and it be in their time. Like, it's exciting, man. Like heavyweight in 2 years' time is probably going to be the one of the best, if not the best division. So, like I said, to have Jon Jones sitting back on the throne for all that to unfold in the near future is exciting for sure. The next thing we're going to talk about, guys, is something you want to talk about, John, and it's another fighter in particular, Funky Ben Askren. You wanted to mention him and his, finally making his debut in the UFC, and I'll let you kick things off, man.
Yeah, so just like you mentioned, I just wanted to speak about Askren. He's finally made the move to the UFC in that trade with Demetrius Johnson with one championship, and yeah, I just wanted to obviously get your take, what you think of it. Can he be a champion? Has he come to the UFC too late? I know obviously people always want to see Fedor Emelianenko in the UFC, and a lot of people in the mixed martial arts circuit wanted to see if Askren was all he's hyped up to be, and I guess we'll soon start to find out. And yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm really happy to see him in the UFC. I know him and Dana White had a lot of disagreements in the past and didn't see eye to eye, but they seem to have put those to one side, and which I'm really glad about. I know well, we can only go on what we read, but Dana White has been known to hold a grudge, and if he doesn't want you to compete in the UFC, you'll never compete in the UFC. So I'm glad that we're seeing Ben Askren, but I'm just more excited to see whether the hype behind him is real, whether he can do it against arguably the best fighters in the world. I know you mentioned some names in the breakdown of people that he's defeated. He's beat some good guys, but they're not the type of guys that you get in the UFC, and he's got a tough opening opponent in Robbie Lawler. But yeah, I'm just really excited to see what impact he can have on the division, whether he can challenge at the top or whether he'll just be kind of a top 5 guy but not be able to beat the likes of Covington and Usman and Woodley, and but yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to see him in the UFC. It's exciting to see what he can do, how far he can go. Do you think he's come to the UFC too late? I mean, he's only 34 years old, so he's still got a good few years left in him. He has been a bit inactive. I mean, we haven't seen him since November of 2017. So, will that have any kind of effect on his performances? I mean, what's your take? Personally, I'm just happy to see him in the UFC and see what he can do, see where he can go. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I'm just happy to see him because, like I alluded to when I was breaking this fight down, I didn't want to go too much into it because I knew this was going to be one of the topics we're going to talk about. But I mentioned Fedor, and Fedor always had that potential rift with Dana, and there was always them questions because Fedor for me is probably the greatest heavyweight of all time. That's my opinion. Other people will argue heavyweights inside of the UFC, and I sort of get that as well, but what Fedor was doing in Pride and then moving on into other promotions was just amazing. And at the time where Brock Lesnar was coming into the UFC, Brock Lesnar was really a pioneer for the next generation and the next era of UFC heavyweight fighters, just because of how big that he was, and he made it so that other big professional athletes saw Brock and thought they could do that as well. So having Fedor being thrown into that mix and competing with the best in the UFC was something that honestly I wish we'd have had as MMA fans, just to see where exactly he was. And the reason I'm speaking so much about that is because I feel that there was always that similar thing with Ben Askren, who was running through fighters in different promotions outside of the UFC, and you always had them people saying, oh yeah, it's all well and good doing that outside of the UFC, but it's different when you get in the UFC. He was 18-0 and people were saying that he had no real test, which is bullshit, because like I mentioned, he's fought Douglas Lima, he's fought Andrei Koreshkov, he's fought really good fighters. Some of the guys, have not been on his level, and it is what it is. Every fighter has those fights on the resume, but there was always that lingering question of, well, you're never going to be proven unless you've come into the UFC. And I'm pretty sure Askren retired as well from ONE FC, just because he was, he'd done everything that he could. In a way, I think he was just getting sick of winning so easily. And he was in his head at this time, he was never going to get in the UFC because, of the what we think again was a rift between Dana and himself. So for it to actually have come to fruition and this weird trade thing that happened is good to see, and I'm really happy that we've got Ben Askren in the UFC and we can finally put these questions to bed. What is he going to be like against UFC opposition? Because after he's had 2, 3 or 4 fights in the UFC, there is going to be no more questions. It's either going to be, yeah, you were never good enough, or actually, shit, yeah, you were good enough, and that the question is going to be squashed at that point. There's going to be no ifs, buts, and what ifs. So, to answer your question of whether he's coming too late, I don't think he's coming too late, because I still think he's going to beat most of the division, but I think he's coming at the wrong time, and there's a difference. So what I mean by that is it's not too late because he's got a lot to give, but it's the wrong time to come in because I feel that, well, for a start, he'll never fight Tyron Woodley. So if Tyron Woodley beats Usman and he beats Colby and he starts wiping out the division, Ben Askren's got to make a choice. He either goes back on his word and fights his friend, or he doesn't fight his friend. Because, they are friends. They're good friends. So that's a bad time. And then let's say Woodley does lose to Usman, and I was right in my breakdown, and I said in regards to Usman and Colby running the division, I think Usman and Colby are also horrible fights for Ben Askren because they're both also good wrestlers. I think they're both better strikers, and they can both put on a pace over a longer period of time in regards to the cardio and gas tank. So, like I say, I'm happy Ben Askren's come in. I don't think he's coming too late. It's just the wrong time for him to come in. I think if he'd come in a couple of years ago, before Usman was at the top, before Colby was at the top, before Woodley had, gained so much confidence and gone on a huge win streak, I think he would have had a good chance at doing well and surging through the division. I just feel that the welterweight division is very full of great talent, that some of the talent is going to be a bad stylistic matchup for Askren. But this is what I mean. Who knows? Askren's level of wrestling and grappling may be better than fighters like Colby and Usman. And like I said, I don't think he's going to fight Woodley. That's why I'm leaving Woodley out of this equation whilst I'm talking about this. But it's interesting. This is what I mean. It's the wrong time for him to come in if he wants to be dominant, but it's the right time to come in to test himself. So there's so many different angles to this. Ultimately, it's just a great thing, though. I love that Ben Askren's in. I love that we've got such a dominant guy that was outside of the UFC for so many years and unbeaten has finally come into the UFC. This is the shit we like. This is why the UFC is the pinnacle of mixed martial arts, because they can make this stuff happen. They can answer questions that have been asked for years. So yeah, love that Ben Askren's in, and I can't wait to see him perform on Saturday night.
Definitely, man.
And finally, as always, we're going to discuss the potential fights that could earn a fight of the night and performance of the night bonuses. So it was me first last week, John. So you first this week. Who have you got?
Performance of the night bonuses. I think I'm going to have to go with Johnny Walker. I think he gets another wild knockout over Misha Cirkunov. Jon Jones, like you say, I think he might get a submission win quite quickly in his title fight against Anthony Smith. So I think he picks up another performance of the night bonus. And then I think the fight of the night is going to be Jeremy Stephens against Zabit Magomedsharipov. I think that's going to be a really exciting bout. So yeah, they're my picks.
Okay, so for fight of the night, I'm going to take Cody Garbrandt and Pedro Munhoz. I just think it could be a really fast-paced fight, and I think Munhoz is durable as well. So if Cody Garbrandt is landing, it could be a case of his durability holds up. I think that's going to be an exciting, fast-paced fight. I am going to pick a sub-fight for this though, because I was torn between another fight, and that's Tesha Torres and Weili Zhang. I've got a funny feeling that's going to have some level of crazy in it as well. So sitting on the fence with one of those two. Ultimately, I will take Garbrandt and Pedro Munhoz, but like I say, that Torres and Zhang fight is going to be awesome for sure. Performance of the night, Jon Jones. I think he finishes Anthony Smith. I think he gets a performance of the night, and Zabit as well. I think Zabit's going to finish Jeremy Stephens, and again, that's going to be impressive because Jeremy Stephens isn't an easy dude to finish. Also, the UFC like promoting guys with these bonuses, so like it's a good thing for Jon Jones to get a bonus with him main eventing and being Jon Jones. I also think that given a prospect performance of the night bonuses like Zabit will help build a profile and help build and make him more recognised in the UFC. So the fight of the night, Cody and Munhoz. Performance of the night is Jon Jones and Zabit. That's the lot for this week's podcast, guys. For the bets this week at UFC 235, don't forget to check out the premium bets from Newsome MMA and the membership options available too at newsomemma.co.uk/premium-bets. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
As always, catch up on anything I'm doing on Newsome MMA. I'm hoping to get some interviews with some UFC London guys before that in a couple of weeks' time. Also check out my work on Fight Post which is on Facebook and www.fightpost.co.uk, and then as always hit me up on Twitter at MMA and me if you want to talk anything MMA related.
Awesome. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I'd like to mention Concussion Pro 1, who are partners here at Newsome MMA. Concussion Pro 1 are the world's first dedicated concussion supplement, providing protection, recovery and benefits to the brain and body of professional athletes. If you go to concussionpro1.com, you can use promo code Newsome MMA for 15% off your order. The next mention is the long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too. And at CBD Life UK, they have a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to also get 15% off your order. And that's it from us, guys. Enjoy the fights on Saturday night, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, and enjoy.